And I think what I did, that was what I had in mind when I did my collection with the tie-dye and taking tie-dye and placing it on canvas as art. Now we have something that a lot of people still have. They still feel a certain way about figurative paintings and all of that. So, but this is fabric, but it's still our art. So there are a lot of ways we can redefine, and it's very important because if you don't, one day that thing you're so trying to protect is going to fall.
Round of applause, please, guys. Thank you very much. So we'll be rounding up soon. I would like to take one or two questions from the audience. Anybody has a question? Now will be the best time. All right. Could we get a mic to Blessing?
Okay, good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
And I hope I don't ramble. I took a lot of notes from what has been said. And I would say one of the things that kept on pressing on my mind while you were speaking is the question of accessibility to popular Hausa culture. And as much as when we talk about the youth, and I'm glad that we're moving away from the top to the bottom approach where we're forcing things on people. The older people, whatever the older people have consumed is what we internalize and what we represent. The youth, you just spoke about street fashion in northern Nigeria, what it's looking like, what it's evolving. We had Arewa with a question mark, getting contemporary artists that are our peers and even from older generations presenting artworks. But now I'm a teacher, so I'd always think, how do we then also improve accessibility from the lowest level? We're thinking about early childhood. And the question is, influences their illustrations. I would have liked to hear that. But also, when you're thinking about accessibility, digital accessibility for children, how are you thinking about bringing up children now that are going to be youth in the future that keep the legacy? Because if we phase out and we grow older, it's going to be harder for it to continue, for the legacy to continue, because the things that are becoming more and more mainstream are not the things that we were also consuming when we were much younger. And even now, we're not all wearing Alte clothing, which is, the new trend for younger people. They're wearing something else. So how do we preserve it? But also, how do we preserve it to the youngest part of our generation? Let me see if I've covered everything in my notes. Yes, and then I wanted to also talk about confirmation bias with northern Nigeria. What happens when it's a certain type of people that we put on pedestals that appreciate our culture before we start seeing it. How do we change that lens, that viewership? That the only reason we started seeing even how big Rema was not how much we appreciated him in Nigeria. It was when he started singing, when he sang with Selena Gomez and Charm went, so how do we now change that lens of who we put on a pedestal, who appreciates our art, how we appreciate our art? I love it so much, but why isn't it so important when I love Northern culture? Why isn't it very important at that stage? And then what also is the question
striving as well for the older story, but that's a whole nother conversation. So it's just creating in the way that you can and working with one another. Like there's no need to fear. The sky is really big enough for all of us. I think that's why I have this.
Okay.
I think we're back, yes.
To answer the first question about children, I think it's very, it's nice that you asked that question because I just completed a children's book. I'm still convincing Abdul Karim to do the illustrations. So it's really nice that you asked. And that's the book I just completed. It's really talking about, okay, can I give a spoiler? I don't know if I should do it.
You should, please, yes, thank you.
Okay. So basically, it's about, it's a book for children about an art center, a visit to the art center. And I try to reference a lot of things with the names, talking about Ladi Kwali, the porter, and all of that. So I think that you're right, because if us now, very soon we are going to be the old ones. We that think we're so young. We're going to be the old ones, and then what? What will the younger ones say? What would be their ideas? And so it's I've been very passionate, actually. I don't know, maybe because I have a daughter now, all of a sudden, I've been having existential crisis, asking myself a lot of questions, like, is this the world I want her to grow up in? Is this the things I want her to experience? And it's been crazy, actually. No one told me this, that you get a serious existential crisis from being a parent. So, so I've been very passionate about children's literature lately, and that's why I just wrote this book. And now that we've had this conversation and with your question, perhaps I might go back to the book and see even more things that we could reference to say this is a book for children coming from a northern Nigerian person, and not just for northern Nigerian children, but for other children who should have a glimpse into what it means for us to be northern Nigeria. So, and I think also when it comes to children, it's just not about the stories, and that's why we need very brilliant illustrators like Abdul Karim. We need even more. Of course, there are more, but we need, just as we say, we have a lot of gap to fill, and it's important that we have a good illustrator to be able to capture a lot of other things like architecture and symbols and whatever. So hopefully, help me beg Abdul Karim to look at it.
All right, thank you so much. Yes, we have one more question. Is there anybody? Okay, so I think that's the last question we'll take after his. Thank you.
Good. I think good afternoon.
Yes.
Good morning. Good morning. Yeah, my name is Mukhtar. Just a quick contribution to the conversation as well would be, I relate a lot with her. I grew up in Warri as well.
Oh, wow.
Yes. And it's sort of striking whenever I see anybody who grew up in that part of the world who is also doing very well in the northern part of the country as well. If you knew me before 2020, I do not wear kaftans, t-shirts and jeans, for those who knew me back in ABU. And it's a bit of a culture shock whenever you move. I currently am taking care of our last born, because my parents still live in Warri, who just moved in to live with me, and I could see a little bit of that, him going through that culture shock, that he's no longer in that side of the country anymore, and he's here. But that's just on the side. Majorly, talking about identity, Arewa identity, I think it's also very important, and this is not to derail the conversation from what it is, but it's also very important for us to look at the political dynamics that is also attached to the identity or where you identify as if you're Nigerian. If you travel a lot, if you travel out of the country, we'll meet outside, we are all Nigerians. Oh my guy, how far? Meet a Nigerian outside the country, it's a bit easy to relate. But the moment you come in, we begin to look for how geography separates us. And then all of a sudden I become a Hausa man. I'm not a Hausa man, I'm from Kogi State, for example. But just because my name is Mukhtar, by virtue of my name being Mukhtar, I am a Hausa man, and Chukwuemeka is an Igbo man. And because of that, it becomes very difficult. There's this spiral of silence happening in the political space around the Hausa or Muslim culture in Nigeria. It's something that we are often scared of talking about. because you feel like if you speak about it, you're speaking from because largely the political space is controlled by Hausas in quotes, or Northerners in quotes, it becomes difficult for you to speak in a way that says, oh, I am being exempted from this popular narrative, because it sounds as if you're speaking from a place of privilege. It's like if a white man starts to say, I'm being marginalized, in America, for example, a black man says, are you mad? So that conversation, I think, is also something that we need to also have. There's a course of popularization that is sort of affecting the northern part of the country. If you live in Warri, like where I grew up, it was difficult for me to identify as a Muslim. It sounded like something I did not want to be associated with. It took a while. It took me moving away completely, going to secondary school in Mina, and then coming to ABU to do my university education, for me to be able to find a balance and then become very comfortable in my own skin. So much so that whenever I go back to Warri, I'm not scared of wearing kaftan and cap. I'm comfortable in my own personal identity. So I think as we discuss this cultural narrative, we should not separate it from the political narrative again that's associated with what alienates people from identifying as Northern Nigeria in Nigeria as well. Thank you.
Thank you. The last person, please. Yeah, we want last question, and we.
Can we say a little bit about him?
The time. Yeah, let's get the last question, and then we round up. Sorry, let's try and keep it short because we're borrowing time.
All right. Star, you were talking about Kaduna Textile Mill, and that part really struck me much, because 2 years ago, I remember a time I was reading a book, As Africa, the Next Factory of the World. There was a detailed history of Kaduna Textile Mill. And I remember just closing that book to go and meet my father. I know he has had a time in Kaduna in the 80s. I was like, Dad, look, is this thing that I'm reading about Kaduna Textile Mill really true? Because I can't see it there in Kaduna again. Yes, you can't imagine the history and this thing. So, a good mention. Thank you for that particular mention. I really enjoyed it. I have a question for you, Aisha. Or let me say, I just wanted to recommend something for me. You know, Abubakar Adam Ibrahim, when we were Fireflies, I think is one extraordinary contemporary literature art. Even the protagonist is presented to us as an artist. And there's a sort of epiphany that occurred to me while reading that book. When he made reference to Doki Denshilingi during horse races in the story, I was like, okay, I know Doki Denshilingi. So does that mean I think our history can be documented through music? Yes, because I know a song like that. And then, so I was a kind of...
I relate to my feelings. So I'm not, just very sure because we're out of time, I feel like we're not going to be able to really answer your question the way that I feel like we should right now because of time, and I hope you forgive us for that. But this is what I'll say concerning that. You're right, there are these political dynamics that do affect, and I think that they play a very significant role in how our art space, there's that hesitancy, there's always that, because I have a friend, Kaduna, who is a mural artist, but Bami Danladi is my friend, he was a very good one, and the other day he came to Abuja, we were talking, and he was telling me something, I think I was trying to tell him, why don't you do this, I'm not going to go into details, and then he was like, but I'm a Christian Northerner, so, and I remember us having that conversation, and the words that I told him as well, and all that, so I do acknowledge, and I've seen it, I've discussed it with artists within the space too, so there's also how that those political/religious dynamics affect even the artists in that space. But we shouldn't let that hold us back anymore. Definitely not in this age, definitely not in this time. And I'm really passionate about that.
Sorry, the last thing, I just have to add what she said about not letting it hold us back. Like, as much as there's that idea, we must not cave into the idea that we have to explain. We're not the only people in the political sphere in Nigeria. Northerners are not the only people in power in Nigeria. When they demand that because you hold some political, that's, again, the Oriental view that we're constantly subjected to. You must, at every point, challenge that idea and not let it hold, because it really does not hold water in the Nigeria that we live in, and it really didn't, even historically. So it's very redundant when we have to hold on to that and explain ourselves or whatever. And yes, read Edward Said's Orientalism and apply it to Northern Nigeria, and you get it. Thanks.
Thank you so much. A huge round of applause for these two panelists, Aisha and Zara. I have quite a bit of takeaway, and all I can say that writers in here, please try and criticize, try and write reviews, post it on Twitter, Instagram, whatever medium it is that you use. Try and reach out people to read what it is that you're writing about these things, so that we could keep a record, okay? And also, I'd like to shout out to Hibav for curating this particular experience. I'm really grateful to be a moderator here. So once again, thank you so much, Aisha Ali Bima and Sazara. And also thank you to me for moderating this panel. Okay, shout out. Mungo de Sose.
It's a round of applause for Mariam. Amazing moderation. Thank you so much. We'll move straight to the next panel, which is going to be a book chat in Hausa. Volunteers, can somebody find Ado? He's busy selling his books so that he can come and have his panel. The other panelists were having marubuciya ce, kuma muna murnan da ta samu shigowa wannan waje. An ce mun ta dauka a Kaduna za a har za ta kama hanyar zuwa Kaduna. Ba dan ta kira waya ba da sai dai ta je ta zauna a Kaduna, mu mu yi da ita maybe virtually. Rahama Sharif Abdul Majid. An haifi Rahama Majid a Agege, jihar Lagos. Ta fara karatu a Lagos, sannan ta yi karatun jami'a a jami'ar Al-Azhar da ke Alkahira, wato Egypt. Rahama ta fara rubutu a shekara ta 1996, inda zuwa yanzu ta buga littattafai sama da 20. Tana cikin kungiyoyi masu zaman kansu na wayar da kan jama'a, kuma ita ce shugabar kungiyar Mace Mutum, wadda take ɗaya daga cikin kungiyoyin matan Hausawa marubuta a Nigeria. Right now, Rahama Majid is a special advisor to the President, Bola Ahmed Tinubu. Welcome, Rahama Majid. Malam Ado is on seat. Ado Bala fitaccen marubucin adabin Hausa ne daga Kano, Nigeria. Ya buga littafin gajerun labari mai suna Husufin Farin Ciki a shekarar 2024, inda ya samu yabo sosai, musamman ma game da salon rubutunsa cikin Hausa tare da ƙoƙarin kiyaye ƙa'idojin rubutun Hausa. A taɓa Malam Ado. Zan miƙa microphone zuwa ga Habiba minti 40, sannan mu ɗan buɗe zuwa ga masu tambaya 2 zuwa 3.
Sannun mu barka da zuwa. Wannan tattaunawar kamar yadda aka ce akan littafin Mace Mutum da littafin Husufin Farin Ciki ne za a yi shi. Littafin Mace Mutum na Hajiya Rahma an buga shi tun a shekarar 2005. Akwai wa'insu a nan wurin wa'inda ba a ma haife su ba lokacin da aka buga shi. Shi kuma littafin Husufin Farin Ciki shekarar nan ne aka buga shi. Ɗaya littafin zube ne, ɗaya littafin gajerun labarai. Zan ba da ɗan tsokaci a kan littafin kafin in dawo kanku. So littafin Mace Mutum, littafin zube ne kamar yadda muka ce. Labari ne cikin labari, abin da ake ce ma intergenerational story, wanda ya ɗauko labarin wata yarinya Fatima Godiya tun daga yarintarta har aurenta har haihuwarta, muka koma labarin diyarta, muka ji labarin yadda diyarta ta yi rayuwa da duka abubuwan da ya faru da su tun daga ƙasar Nijar har Nigeria, tun daga Kano har Sokoto har Lagos. Dogon labari ne wanda ya shiga cikin hurumin jinsi, human rights issues, na manta abin da Hausa fakuna. Yancin 'yan adam. Littafin Husufin Farin Ciki shi kuma littafin gajerun labarai ne da aka rubuta da Hausa. Labaran da ke ciki sun taɓo wurare daban-daban na rayuwar ɗan adam. Akwai labaran protests, akwai labaran ilimi, akwai labaran zamantakewa, babu inda Malam Ado bai taɓo ba dai cikin wannan littafin. Yanzu Malama Rahama yana ce na yi ɗan tsokaci, ke kuma zan baki dama ke a bakinki ke gaya mana menene littafin mace mutum, ke ba mu tsokaci akan littafin mace mutum.
To, duk da Malam Ado yana ce yana busy yana ta sai da littattafai bai sayan muku ba. To, littafin mace mutum musoma da waɗanda ba a haife su ba an buga shi shekara 19, kuma kafin a buga shi nasa an samu kamar shekara 3 tsakanin rubuta shi da buga shi, wanda hakan ya haɗa masa akalla shekara 22 kenan. Kuma kamar yadda Habiba ta faɗa ne, littafi ne da ya tsokaci akan 'yancin mutum ba 'yancin bil'adama ba, wato ina nufin mace. An dubi yanayin da take ciki. Babban abin mahimmanci shine mu kalli lokacin da aka yi littafin, wato shekara 22 da suka wuce, gwammai biyu kenan, abinda bature ke kira 2 decade. Lokaci ne da ana tsakiyar jihadin neman yaya za a yi mace ta zama mutum, saboda yanayin da ta samu kanta na sanya ta a can baya kafin a tuno da wani abu ya kamata ma ba a sauraranta, ba a ji ra'ayinta akan abubuwa. Mace ɗaya tal a duniya in ta yi abu ta isa ta wakilci mata miliyan. Duk abin da mace za ta yi, in ana da wata guda ɗaya da ta yi, to fa labarinta ne. Sannan idan ana da mata miliyan da za su yi abin arziki, to in Allah ya yarda ba za ka ji sun wakilci fa wasu mata ba fa, sai ita wannan guda ɗayan da ake zargi da wani abu. Haka muka samu kanmu da taimakon abubuwa da dama a ƙasar Hausa, wanda ya sanya ita da kanta macen har ma ta fara yarda da cewa kai ita ma ba mutum bace, ita dama ga ta nan ba wata abin a zo a gani ba ne. Abin ya yi nisa da zan iya tuna wani abu, duk da ba so nake yi magana akan addini ba, amma bari in yi magana akan wani adabi na addini. Akwai wata sura ɗaya a cikin Ƙur'ani da ta ba da tarihi, mafi girman salon ba da tarihi, ana ce mata suratu Yusuf. Sura ce da ta yi labarin soyayya, sura ce da ta yi magana akan yadda mace ta yi sacrifice akan tana son wani, ta dinga shiga hanyoyi har ta ba shi zaɓi akan ko ya so ta ko kuma ta hukunta shi. Shi wannan namijin a ciki, wanda annabin Allah ne, shi ya zaɓi ya tafi gidan yari maimakon ya yi abin da ta ci, ba wai ita ta kai shi ba. Amma sai da aka manta da yayinsa 11 wanda suka kai shi cikin rijiya, aka koma aka ba da labarin wannan matar da a cikin labarin special appearance kawai ta yi, kun san akwai wani fitowa na musamman. Aka ce duk labarinta ne, har ma sai da ta rubuta wani abu, shedan ya je ya wanke ya ce ta fi shi shari. Duka aka dinga kanzagi, aka dinga kirari. Su kuma waɗancan ka yafe musu labari ya wuce. Aka maza suke, sorry, hakuri nake, haka mutane suke. So da irin waɗannan abubuwan ne suka sanya aka zo aka yi rubutun littafin mace mutum, wato a fara ji daga angle ɗin mata akan cewa mu ma fa mutane ne, muna buƙatar a saurari abubuwa daga wajenmu. Sannan a ba mu 'yancinmu na ɗan adam, sannan a yadda da cewa wannan abin da ake ganin muna shiru ba wai ba ma jin ciwonsa ba ne, yadda ake tafiyar da mu muna jin ciwonsa. Wannan kusan shi ne dunkulallen abin da ya sanya muka yi mace mutum. Malama ya ɗan isa?
Sosai, za mu zagayo don akwai abubuwa da za mu zagayo mu dawo mu tattauna. Amma yanzu Malam Ado, a ba mu tsokacin husufin farin ciki, yadda aka, menene asalin abin da ya sa aka rubuta shi.
Assalamu alaikum jama'a. Shi wannan littafin husufin farin ciki gajerun labaru ne, aka hada su aka shiga gasa da su. To musabbabin da aka shiga gasan nan da su, yawanci gasannin da ake sawa a Hausa ana ba da jigo, sai a ce wai a yi magana ko kan fyaɗe ko kan almajiranta ko wani topic, wanda su kansu wanda suka initiate wannan gasan, idan an yi rubutun su kansu ba za su implementing wa'annan abubuwan da suke requesting a rubuta musu ba. So amma wannan gasa abin da yasa na shige ta, su ba su da topic, su Gusau Institute, you can write anything kawai, su ka rubuta duk abin da kake so. Kuma ina ganin haka marubuci ya kamata ya zama, ba sai an yi dictating an ce masa ya rubuta abu akan kaza ba. So falilahi alhamdulillah shiga wannan gasa din kuma sai aka yi shortlisting, littafin ya zama na 3 daga ciki. Sai bayan haka abin da zan kara ga kan gajerun labaran cewa shine wani abu cewa lokacin da aka gina rubutun Hausa, first generation irin su gidan dabino, su Bala Anas Babilanta, su sun zo sun gina abubuwan da an zage su, an yi wani sun sha gwagwarmaye su. So na baya da suka biyo bayan su kuma suna bin pattern ɗinsu, suna ci gaba da rubutu. Duniya kuma tana ci gaba da juyawa. Mu kuma generation na yanzu ya kamata a ce content ɗin ya juya. Kowane generation akwai alhaki a kansu da ya kamata su ɗi wani nauyi su ci gaba da shi. Bai kamata mu ci gaba da rubutun soyayya ba da sauransu, alhali duniya ana rubutu da yawa, akwai genres da yawa, akwai literary fiction, graphic novel, magic realism da sauransu. Amma mu a Hausa kullum daga labarin soyayya sai na yaƙi. Yawa. Yanzu misali a Turai ana maganar genre romance novel. In kika bubbuga romance novel za ki ga categories wajen 5 ne a ƙasansa. Ki ɗauko historical fiction za ki ga akwai regency, medieval da waye duk rubutu ake yi a kansu. Amma mu a Hausa kullum in aka ce labarin soyayya sai a ce maza labarin yaƙi. Ba mu taɓuka wani abu. So muna so mu canja tunanin ya zama na cewa marubuci kar a gaya masa me zai rubuta kur. Ya yi tunani abin ya rubuta da kansa kur. Ina ga shi ne wannan ɗan kaɗai ya cin abin da.
Na gode Malam Ado. Kamar ka ce husufin farin ciki shine littafinka na farko da ka buga ko? So ina so ne ka ɗan min bayani akan kai me kowa ya san ka da sai da littattafai da karanta littattafai. Mun sani in dai ka zo wurin Malam Ado kana ma iya faɗin layin wani littafi ka ce na taɓa karantawa an ce kaza wani littafi ne, Malam Ado zai gaya maka wani littafi ne da kuɗin littafin. So shi ne nake so in je yanda ka canja ko in ce yanda ka faɗo cikin rubutu daga sai da littattafai da karanta littattafai da sharhin littattafai ga mutane ka faɗo cikin rubutun littattafai a yanzu. Ta yaya ka ji lokacin da ka fara rubutun wani abu ne ya canja, kana rubutawa kana tunanin oh wannan yayi kama da littafin wane, ai wannan labarin ko na dan tabo wani kaɗan.
To gaskiya initially ni makaranci ne tun asali. Yauwa ni makaranci ne, so ban zaci ba ma zan zama marubuci. So duka littattafan nan Sirhama sai suka zo suka dina, suka ajiye. Yauwa to da suka ajiye mu kuma to ai dole mu ci gaba da neman abin da za mu karanta. So mun nemi na turanci mun karanta, falillahi alhamdu. Turanci wata kofa ce da take buɗe tunani. Yawa, so mun karanta littattafai a turanci da wasu yaruka suka buɗe, muka zo aka ci gaba da rubutun nan tunda ba ni Hausa. Ana so a karanta littafin Hausa, gaskiya ba littafin Hausa yanzu. Mutane suna complaining wannan. Har na zo na fara sai da littafi. Yawa. So along the way ina dan rubuta su ina ajiyewa shikenan har aka zo aka kawo aka buga wannan husufin farin ciki kenan.
Na gode. Kamar yadda ka ce an daina rubuta littattafan Hausa yadda ake rubuta su a da za ka gan su birjik a ko'ina, ba wai an daina rubuta su bane yanzu za a iya cewa an rage. To Malama Rahama, ko za mu jin dalilin da ya sa kuka daina rubuta littattafai birjik yadda muke ganin su da?
So Ado ne suka kore mu. Ni ban ma zaci an daina ba gaskiya, saboda ina zaton ba rubutu aka daina ba, buga littafi aka daina. Akwai abin da wani lokaci sau tare ba ma kalla, shine idan ana maganar littafi ana magana ne tsakanin marubuci da makaranci. So kowa yana juya kowa. Abinda makaranci ya fi mai da hankali yana so ko kuma ya tafi gare shi, shi ma saboda da dama daga cikin marubutan ai makaranta ne, a damu ma muna da abin da ya fi jan hankalinmu. Matsalar da aka dinga fuskanta a da ake ta cewa dole marubuci ya taurin kan dole sai ya tsaya ga wani abu da zai rubuta ko kuma yaya ne. ba rayuwar bahaushe ce tana son wani abu shi kamata kawai akwai abin da ba reality bane kawai ya kamata ne don haka wannan abin da ya kamata shi za a yi ta yi amma in ba haka ba kowa yana magana ne da mutanen da suke lokacinsa misali lokacin da na so rubutu a iya sani na musamman bayan shekaru sun zo na gane cewa ina magana ne da mutanen zamani na ba iyayensu ba to amma ana so in ba wa iyaye labarin illar wani matsala yayin da ba iyayen bane makaranta ba sannan ba masu bane a gabana ba generation ina ne a gabana yan shekara 16 nan ne zuwa sama wanda muke yayi tare don haka suna da lokacin karatu suna da lokacin soyayya mata ne sannan al'umma ce da a daidai lokacin ake kyankyashe adabinta na rubutu vajin al'umma ce wanda a daidai wannan lokacin zaki ga komai dama yana fitowa ne daga nature dinsa namiji dama shi dan kasada ne yaki yake so saboda haka yaki aka dinga rubuta masa ba a yi laifi ba da aka yi haka mata 'yan soyayya ne dama 'yan rai dangin gora ne saboda haka soyayya suke so a daidai wannan lokacin shine abin da ba su da shi saboda haka shi aka rubuta amma idan tafiya ta yi tafiya mutane suka canja akan cewa akwai abin da suke so a rubuta musu shine yake juyawa ba wai wani ci gaba ne ko kuma wani abu aka samu ba a zamani ne ya sanya haka ɗaya daga cikin abubuwan shine a yanzu mutane da ni mai magana mun daina karatun takarda mun koma muna yi akan allunan waya tabs da sauransu saboda haka marubuta yanzu abin me aka yi da maza in ji karya yawa suke ƙara yi ana rubutu amma a tafi gidan ɗabi'i ne a je a yi ɗabi'i ba a yi sannan an sami wasu ƙungiyoyi ko kuma wata gamayya kamar irin su hip hop ɗin da ake da su da irin su hikayata da su gusau institute ɗin wanda duk mun yi aiki tare da su wasu wajaje ne da suka kawo wata ƙa'ida ta sanya gasa wadda ta taimaka wajen sake komawa a tace abin da zai ma iso cikin takarda saboda sun sassanyo maimakon maganan da su malam lokacin wa'azi suke mana gafa abin da ya kamata ku rubuta ba sa ba mu ko sisi amma da aka zo kan wanda suke fito da gasa kun dai san dan Najeriya da san promo ko wuta zai siya sai an ce za a baka unit ɗaya kyauta saboda haka mu yan promo ne ana zuwa ana cewa za a dinga bada wani abu saboda haka za a yi gasa duk waɗannan abubuwan da aka yi shekara da shekaru ana fama da mu muka ƙi marubutan yanzu suna yi wani marubuci zai ji wallahi ka'idar rubutu sai ta samu jigo sai ya samu kaza sai an kiyaye waye saboda ina so in ci wata gasa ko ina so in isa wani abu so littattafan wanda suke isa ga takarda an ƙara tace su ne sannan kuma wasu suna nan ka ci barkatai din da adabin zube adabin bariki adabin bayan fage adabin gaban fage adabin menene duk suna nan ana da su ba wanda aka dina don haka ba a daina rubutu ba amma an daina bugawa da yawa
an daina bugawa da yawa to amma kuma yanzu ke a malama Rahama mun daɗe ba mu ga rubutu daga wajen ki ba
yanzu tsofe da ni na yin buku rubutu
haba ai ba tsufa a rubutu
to ina rubutu ba wai ba na yi ba har yanzu lokaci ne da commitments sun gulla ake ce musu ko sun yi yawa akwai littafin da a yanzu haka ni ina jin bai fi shafi 200 ba inda buga shi za a yi da nake rubuta ina jin ya kai shekara 3 saboda duk inda na sami da kyan na zo na yi shafi ɗaya zan shiga yin wani abu ba kamar lokacin da kai yake zafi ina yawan tunawa wani lokaci sai in ji kamar ma wani mugun mafarki ne in na tuna na rubuta mace mutum a wata ɗaya kwana 30 cif na yi ina rubuta mace mutum duk na gama abin da zan hada.
For context mace mutum peji kusan 500 ne.
520 ne.
520.
So na rubuta shi a wata ɗaya saboda ban da nauyin kowa ban san me ma yake min ciwon kai ba ban da matsalar mata ɗin kawai ita ce a gabana. Ban da iyali ban da aikace kuma in ƙara gaya miki wani abu ba wai kawai zaune ake ba ina makaranta ina jin ina shekara ta 300 aji na 300 sorry a jami'a na rubuta mace mutum kuma kulla kaina na akan yanda ɗalibai suke kulla kansu za su yi karatu na kulla kaina na ɗauki wannan shekarar na kai ta gaba na ce ai jaraba wannan gaba da kulla kaina ni na rubuta littafi. So aka ci gaba da abin amma a yanzu mun dan hau wani rank din da ba za mu iya irin wannan kasadar ba. So rubutun ya zo yana dan kasa wanda kamar yadda Malam Bala ya riga ya faɗa ne da suka ga cewa dole su samar da abin da za a rubuta su karanta saboda suna kishin karatun dole haka suka yi mu ma haka muka laɓe mu je ne. Sannan kuma a yanzu na fi jin daɗin rubutun fim maimakon rubutun littafi wanda ni ce director, ni ce producer, ni ce writer, ni ce script, ni ce waye. So amma wannan wanda zan je in yi wa wani ne sallame shi ya dan fi min sauki gaskiya shine.
Na gode Malam Rahama. Malam Ado, zan so mu shiga cikin labarin Husufin farin ciki. A cikin labarin akwai wani labari guda ɗaya, labarin Bala da Hannatu. Gaba ɗaya labarin dai layi 5 ne. Naga aka ce gajeren labari amma gajeren labari wannan gajere layi 5 ne, wannan guntu ne ba gajeren labari ba. Me za ka iya faɗa mana akan labarin Bala da Hannatu, me yasa wannan ne labarin kaɗai?
Ok, to wannan labari kamar abinda duniya ta ci gaba kullum ana daɗa abubuwa suna daɗa canjawa. A cikin short story ɗin ma akwai short story, sannan akwai flash fiction, akwai microfiction, akwai dribble, akwai abubuwa da yawa ne wanda za ka yi su rubutu ƙasa da word count ƙasa da 100. Yanzu shi wannan labarin ina jin adadin kalmansa bai wuce kalma 100 ba. Yau bai kai kalma 100 ba yauwa. Amma kuma akwai character mutum guda 2, sannan akwai plot, sannan kuma akwai story a cikinsa. Ragowar labarin kai makaranci kai za ka ƙara shi wa kanka. Wannan shi ne flash fiction.
Bari in ɗan karanta muku labarin, ƙila za ku gane me nake.
Yauwa sai ku ɗora daga.
Labarin Bala da Hannatu. Kai da kanka ka faɗa aure ko rashin aure, to na zaɓi rashin aure. Haka kika ce? Haka na ce, to na sake ki. The end.
To yanzu in kika tambayi masu sauraro za su gaya miki character, kuma za su gaya miki waye magana duk za su gaya miki. Ragowan element din su za su ƙara shi wa kansu.
So babu wani abu da za a ci gaba tun da dai an kai ga ƙarshe an saki ta.
Yawwa ragowan su za su ƙara shi wa. Kamar a kai miki abstract painting ne a ajiye miki canvas ɗaya yana da yellow, ɗaya yana da red. Ke za ki ce a tsakiyar orange ne. Ba sai na gaya miki ba. Yawwa.
Gaskiya ko a gajerun labarai, ni dai gaskiya ko a flash fiction ban taɓa ganin wannan guntun labarin ba gaskiya. Za mu ƙara dawowa labarin farko da yake cikin littafin, labarin Ijaba. Ijaba ne ko Ijaba?
Ijaba.
Ijaba. Hausan ta wace wata na gurgantacciyar Hausa ce. A labarin Ijaba, zan iya cewa labarin kusan kowane labari da ake ɗaukowa ne na rayuwa, kullum labarin da ake ji ne wane ya ƙara aure, yama matar shi wulaƙanci, yanzu ɗan shi ya je ya yi karatu, ya yi kuɗi, ya yi mota, ya dawo. Ka ɗauko labarin ina karanta shi a cewa to ita ce dai labarin da aka saba kullum. Amma kuma sai muka fada kamar mun fada duniyar aljanu, sai muka koma sihiri, ana ba da magunguna, gidaje na bacewa. Kai mun bayanin kan labarin Ijaba.
Ok, wato labarin Ijaba kamar yadda kika yi magana ne haka, cewa in za a ba da labarin Bahaushe, popular culture na Bahaushe, dole sai an ba da labarin rayuwar gidan auren Bahaushe, zama da kishiya da waye. Ba za a taɓa ba da labarin Bahaushe babu wannan ba. Yawa sai ya shigo ciki, kamar ina ga shi ne wani gundarin al'adan Bahaushe. Akwai maganan zaluncin kishiya, ta zalunci ɗan kishiya da waye, daga ƙarshe wanda aka zalunta ya zo ya yi nasara. An kika dubi tatsuniyoyinmu irin su da Skindari da Gui da yara, duka haka aka gina su, haka muka taso muka karanta su. So ina ga wannan labarin dole ma sai na sa shi a farko kawai, saboda in dai kana so ka san Bahaushe ta kansa za ka fara sanin Bahaushe. Yawwa ina ga.
Dan daga wannan kuma sai muka koma ilimi. Ina tsayin da ka buɗe labarin da wannan labarin yadda ka ce ya kamar shine asalin labarinmu yadda ka ce na Hausawa. Mun fara daga nan. Amma abin da nake so ina ga a cikin labarin gaba ɗaya shine detailing ɗin. Akwai ba a faɗi shekarar da aka yi labarin ba. Amma an ce shekarar da kamfanin lemon kwalba na 7up ta fitar da gasar lashe cinye sabuwar mota ƙirar Dewu. Detailing in ku karanta wannan littafin detailing in shine zai dauki hankalinku
kuma yana nan a waje da farashinsa.
Da kana rubuta labaran nan na san ka ka mai da hankali akan yadda za ka ɗauki hankalin mutane yadda za ka rubuta salon da jigon labarin amma editing in labarin kusan shekara nawa ya ɗauka, kwanaki nawa ya ɗauka, watanni nawa ya ɗauka?
Well, gaskiya da rubuta kin san short stories ne kowanne guda ɗaya nake yin shi na aji kafin a kai ga in compiling ɗinsu ma in tura su gasan ya kai wajen shekara 5 ina rubuta su kuma gasan it was 2019 kuma ban kai ga publishing ba sai 2024 kin ga shekara 5 yanzu ga 2019 kenan wato gaskiya ni abin da na fuskanci rubutu kaman girki ne yawanci sai ka yi shi a hankali da nutsuwa yawa kana dawowa yau da gobe kana sake editing kana sake yi har Allah ya sa ka ji cewa abin ya yi daidai ya bar hannunka yawa
za ka iya cewa wannan editing process ɗin da ake yi shine kusan abin da littattafan da muke samu na yanar gizo yanzu sabbin littattafai yadda malama Rahama ta ce littattafai suna nan birjik na bayan fage da na gaban fage abinda suke lakin kenan?
Akwai wannan ma quite sure amma akwai wanda su duk a wani fanni na fasaha ko zane ne ko music ne ko akwai 'yan baiwa wanda once and for all za su maka abu ya wuce gurin yauwa kamar Rahama 30 days ta rubuta mace mutum ni gaskiya ba zan iya ba zan iya 30 days in rubuta littafi ba duk yadda zan kwatanta so amma dai dagewa ka zauna kana yin sa kana bin sa akan sa ka dauke shi da gaske yana sa yayi kyau.
Na gode. Malama Rahama bari mu dawo ta kanki da littafin mace mutum. Kamar yadda muka ce littafin mace mutum dogon labari ne wanda ya dauki ba zamanin mutum ɗaya ba ma ya tafi intergenerational family labarin mutane daban-daban. Kuma an fara labarin nan ba ma daga labarin wadda muke jin labarin ta ba a wata ke ba da labarin wata da a cikin labarin lokacin da kike rubuta mace mutum wannan first draft din da kika yi na cikin kwana 30 din nan tun daga farkon labarin har ƙarshen shi haka labarin yake a rubuce
haka yake
haka kika rubuto shi
haka na rubuta shi
ka ji baiwa ba
ba na tuna wani abu daban akwai wani kamar da yadda malam ado ya faɗa ne wato ba baiwa kawai ba akwai yadda mutum ya iya nan take yana so ya ajiye abin da yake kallo a cikin kwakwalwarsa wanda yana faruwa akan marubuta da dama da sai aga kamar ba su yi rubutu daidai ba ko wani abu haka abin yake a cikin kwakwalwarsu haka hoton yake bai yi maka ba daban da bai daidai ba ne wani lokaci yakan yi wa wani ba daidai ba saboda tsarin ko ba ta adabi ya kalla ba ya kalle shi ne ta addini ko ta al'ada ko ta wani tsatsoron ra'ayi ko kuma ta yanda ya tashi da sauransu amma marubucin da yana kallon labarinsa ne kafin ya rubuta shi ba shi da matsala da cewa zai koma ya sake yin can ya dawo nan wajen ya yi sai dai ya dan shiga dan lokacin nan da likitoci suke cewa kowane dan adamu dama yana da hauka ta minti 5 to in labarin ya keto ta wannan lokacin in ka dawo hankalinka sai ka sake kowa ka kalli wannan hoton
to shi littafin mace mutum kusan zaki iya kiyasce mana editing din shi da binciken da kika yi akan littafin kusan shekara nawa zaki ce ko watanni nawa aka ana editing ana gyara shi ana tace shi
a editing wannan su malam zaki tambaya ba ruwa na ni labari kawai na bani abinda na sani shine a wannan lokacin saboda ina da ciwuwukan, ina da abin da nake so in ba da labari a kansu, amma ba ni da ainihin garuruwan da abin yake faruwa wanda nake so matan su je su wakilta. So don haka na mun tashi da ni da Malam Ado Gidan Dabino mun je Nijar, mun je wasu ƙauyuka musamman waɗanda suke kusa da Najeriya don mu ga ainihin waɗannan matan da suke cikin wannan labarin suna nan, kuma da dama alhamdulillah muka same su. Sannan muka dawo wasu ƙauyuka da Najeriya musamman ma inda ba a cika zuwa ba a cikin labaran Najeriya, su ne arewa maso gabas. So mun shiga wasu ƙauyuka daga arewa maso gabas kuma muka samu waɗannan matan, a nan muka haɗa hotunansu akan lallai labarin cewa mace ba mutum bace din nan akwai shi, ba wai ƙage na bane a kaina. So muka zo muka tattara shi kawai, aka saka su suka bi layi suka ba mu labari, amma ba wani abin nan. So sauran abin da ya saura kuma bayan
suka magana suna tattaunawa mata, ai ita ma mahaifiyarta mai neman 'yancin mata ce, amma jiyan da ta kare duk abin da suke yi suna cewa suna neman mata 'yanci, at the end of the day sai su banzatar da matan, kamar ana ci da mata ne, ana cewa ana neman 'yancin mata. Sai ta ce za ta ba ta labari, shine ta fara ba ta labarin Fatima Godiya, wata yarinya a ƙasar Nijar wadda aka yi ma yatta aure, ta tafi gidan aure tare da yatta a matsayin 'yan zaman ɗaki. Sai labarin ya tsille daga nan, Hajiya Rahama ta rinka rubuta shi, aka baro Nijar aka taho Najeriya aka tafi Lagos, har Fatima Godiya ta faɗi ta mutu, ta haihu, yatta ta girma, duk muna zaune muna karantawa.
Wayo.
To yanzu shine abin da nake so in tambaye ki, kamar yadda kika ce a lokacin kika rubuta shi, shine abin da yake so sa zuciyanki, kina so ki bada labarin nan ki ce mace mutum ce, ana nuna ma mace ita ba mutum bace. Wannan labarin a lokacin ba ke kadai ya so samu rai, ya sa mutane da yawa zuciya, mutane sun dauke shi da muhimmanci. Yanzu idan zaki sake rubuta littafin mace mutum, shekara 20 sun wuce, zaki sake rubuta littafin mace mutum a ce a sabon littafi, me kike ganin zai canja a yanda kika rubuta littafin, me zai karu?
Rabon da aima wannan tambayar tun 2013, tun a wancan lokacin kuma 2013 shi ma wajen shekara nawa kenan yanzu? Yawa yanzu muna 2014, shekara 9 ko? Ok, to wannan shekarun zan iya tunawa ko a wancan lokacin an yi min wannan tambayar a BBC, nake ce musu da zan rubuta mace mutum da kaman kashi 70 daga cikin labarin ba haka ba. Zai kasance ba. To yanzu bayan shekara 11 zan iya cewa 100% sama ba haka zai kasance ba. Akwai abubuwan da na zo na sake kallon su, na fahimci cewa akwai neco na mace ɗin ita da kanta wajen ingiza yanayin yadda rayuwarta ta kasance. Illa iyaka taimakon da ake samu daga jinsin maza bai wuce na amfanuwa da wannan nature din wajen kaskantar da ita ba. Sautare mace tana da sadaukarwa. Misali, mutane sukan ga mata suna zaune a gida ba sa aiki, sai a ce maza sun hana su aiki kaza 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 da sauransu. So sai wani misali guda ɗaya da ya fara sawa na kalla a cikin mace mutum cewa ta yiwu fa ba haka bane mu ma da hannunmu. Wani abu ne ya fara a kaina. Wani abu ne ya fara a kaina. Ni da mai gidana dukkanmu mun samu aiki kusan lokaci guda, saboda kusan mun yi makaranta ne lokaci guda. So na samu aikin jarida wanda zai daga ni daga inda muka yi aure muka tare. Shi ma dama kuma soja ne, so kowane lokaci dama baya wannan wajen. Rana guda muka ɗau jakan mu yayin nan muka dawo aka sake, kowa yana can yana yi. A lokacin da muka fara haihuwa muka sami yarinyar mu ta farko, na yanzu wane ne yake da wannan tunanin dole fa in zauna in gina gida? Ni ce. Ni na zaɓi haka, kuma na zaɓa ɗin fa ana ƙiƙiƙaƙa, saboda ina jin sai da dangi ma suka kawo aka yi tara-tara. Wallahi ba za a bar yarinyar nan ta zauna ita kaɗai ba. So dole wani ya bar aiki, ko kai ko ni, da yake irin dukkan mutane ne, maza mutane ne da mata mutane, ba wai ana zaɓa ake yi waye zai zai. To don haka sai na kalli cewa a'a wane ne a ciki ya fi shirin cewa zai iya barin wani abu don ya gina gida. A yanzu a duniyar da dukkan mu bi muna da yanci, ni na zaɓa da raɗin kaina bari in zauna, kuma na yi wannan zaman na ji wajen shekara 8 ina zaune ina ganin cewa dole sai akwai abin da za mu kira gida in aka fita nan wajen 'ya'yanmu za su iya dawowa kuma su samu ɗaya daga cikin iyayensu. To waɗannan abubuwan sun yi ta faruwa akan mata da yawa. Sautari sukan sadaukar su kyala wani abu, su maza su je su yi, yayin da gaskiya maza ba su da wannan sadaukarwa. Shi namiji shi a kowane lokaci, abin da ya sa mata wani lokaci mukan ce mata mutane, shi namiji a kowane lokaci shi mutum ɗaya ne. Rayuwa daga farkonta har zuwa ranar da zai koma ga Allah kansa ya sani. Shi yasa za ku gani cewa da za a samar da salo na tafiya yin ilimi wani lokaci, kuma ku yi haƙuri fa, ba wai ina faɗa bane da illa ba, wato ina faɗa ne kawai akan ɗabi'ar ɗan adam, ba wai ina kallanta a kasawa ba. Amma sautari za ki iya ganin akwai maza musamman a arewacinmu suna can suna ƙara karatu, 'ya'yansu kuma na nan na yawo ba sa karatu. Zai yi wahala ki samu mace ta yi haka. In ta samu daman yadda za ta biya wa yaro makaranta, wato bayan abin nan za ta iya komawa ga ɗanta, oke ni ko sakandare na samu ya isa, shi bari ya fara daga primary. Amma namiji zai yi tunanin cewa na fa gama digiri na 2, yanzu da abin da ake hada kayan ɗakin ki da a hada a siyar in je in samu na 3 kawai. So lissafinsa yakan fara da kansa ne, wannan haka yake a tsarinsa. Shi sanya a abubuwa da tsarin dokokin duniya da dokokin zamantakewa da yadda ake kallon abubuwa, ya yi wa kansa adalci bila adadin. Sai ya tuno kansa so 100 tukuna, sai ya tuno inda mace za ta amfani shi da 10 sai ya taho sai ba ta. Wannan shi ne tsarin.
Malama Rahama, yadda kika ce mata suna sadaukarwa, wata rana ba an sa su dole ba ne. To a cikin labarin mace mutum, yadda kika ce in kika rubuta shi yanzu zai canja, za ki iya gaya min wani abu specifically da za ki ce Fatima Godiya a yanzu in kika rubuta shi Fatima Godiya za ta yi kaza maimakon ta yi kaza, ko kuma Amina za ta yi kaza maimakon ta yi kaza?
Amina ta yi da abin da za ta yi a aminanta, ko a yanzu ma za ta iya zama aminanta a haka. Amma Fatima Godiya da yayar Talami su ne nake ganin cewa akwai abubuwan da ba a haka za su yi ba. Misali, Fatima mutumin da ta fara aura tana da hanyoyi da dama da za ta hukunta daga cewa ta cimma burin rayuwarta, ma tana da wannan alternative din sosai da sosai a yanzu. So ba shi damar da ta yi akan jin cewa kamar na zame mai alaƙaƙai, akwai ɗan zaɓinta a ciki. Da samtin basaraken da ta aura tana da dama ta sanya abin da sai daga baya yadda ta yi. Ba zan fita in barka ba don mace ce ko ma don mece ce, kai dan gidan wane ne da zaka ce ba za ka zo ji da kika ban man daukan mata lauya yanzu so ba za ta yadda wannan basaraken dan ta haifar mai mace ta kuma tafi da nauyin wannan yaddan mace bace ta je ta yi ta wannan yawon tana fafatawa saboda ta samu wani abu ba sannan ita ma da kanta yarinyar daga inda ta dora da inda Fatima ta zo ta sake samun rayuwarta da ma wasu mata da ta je ta samu misali akwai wata mace biyar-biya a cikin labarin ita wannan biyar-biyan tana daukan abubuwa da dama amma akwai abubuwan da a yanzu inda zan saka ita wannan biyar-biya zan saka ta akan ga abubuwan da take achieving ya sanya ta yi haka sau tari matan yarbawa sukan yi wannan sadaukarwar ne su ba wa maza kuɗi su ba wa kaza don dai kada wannan dai gidan ya rushe sannan waɗannan 'ya'yan dole su tashi cewa akwai ranar da za a ce akwai wanda yake abin nan sun sami abin nan ɗinsu iyayensu tare so matan yarbawa da mazan yarbawa suna riƙe aure ne saboda da an sami iyali an sami 'ya'ya to ya kamata a ce an ci gaba da zama tare bai kamata a karya wannan gidan ba wannan ne yake sanyawa wacce tafi damuwa da gida ta ɗauki kaso mafi tsoka to duk waɗannan da a haka za a sassaka su Fatima ba ta da dalilin da zai sa mata shiga wannan wahalhalin da ta shiga a wancan lokacin ne da ba a da baki amma yanzu muna nan wane ne shi
na gode malam Rama. Malam Ado kamar yadda na tambayi malam Rama littafin husufin farin ciki ya taɓo abubuwa na current affairs da suke faruwa yanzu abubuwan da ke cikin littafin nan rayuwar ɗan adam ne a cikin wannan zamanin da muke so idan yanzu za ka yi tunani a ce yanzu nan da shekara 20 mu zo bikin hibaf na 24 sai mu zauna da kai muna maganar husufin farin ciki me kake ganin zai canja a cikin labarin nan let's just imagine it
ni ina ganin kamar ba zan iya tunda ba mu kai wancan shekarun ba I can't see amma yanzu dai ina ganin abubuwa ba za su canja ba sai dai akwai labari guda ɗaya da na rubuta wanda nake ganin kamar inda zan yi shi kamar zan iya canja shi so labarin kamar ya ɗan yi wa'azi da yawa haka a ciki so masu rubutunmu kuma koyaushe ana mana sharaɗi da cewa wai faɗakarwa ake ni ina ganin ni ba na ɗaukan wannan a matsayin rubutu yawa kawai ka rubuta abin da ranka yake so ka kalli reality a yanda take shi ma rubuci a sama yake koyaushe ba ruwansa da nan ba daidai ba ne nan daidai ne kawai shi abin da ya gani shi zai recording ya ajiye wa al'umma i gani haka ne rubutu koyaushe akwai wani littafi da ita Rahama ta rubuta a 2004 ina ga tuwon kaya ne lokacin da Rahama ta rubuta tuwon kaya mun saba littattafanmu na Hausa koyaushe 1, 2 and 3 suke zuwan mana da Rahama ta tashi kawai sai ta yi shi 1 ne kowa ya bude baki ana jira a gatu ya wannan labari yau a jijiki kowa aka zo ana ta complain ya wannan littafi zai kasance na daya wannan littafin abin da ya nuna kawai reality a yanda take haka take kawai a haka ta yi recording ɗinsa a haka ta yi depicting ɗin abubuwan da suke so akwai abubuwan da ba za ka iya canja su ba gaskiya a yanda suka zo a haka za su tafi zamanin idan ya zo shi can gaba shi zai canja su
yanzu kaman labarin Bala da Mahmud wanda aka yi ana suna protest for education an ƙara kuɗin makaranta da abubuwa kana tunanin wannan labarin zai zama yana da tasiri nan da shekara 5 shekara 10 ko gwamnatin mu za ta canja kafin lokacin
to gwamnati za ta iya canja wato ala kulli halin da gwamnati kullum muna kallanta ta fuskar zalunci amma wani zubin gwamnati kuma tana da adalci sai dai mu kasa ganin sa yanda muke ganin sa ko a cikin labarin zaki ga inda cewa akwai inda ake bada babban speto na ƙasa ana ba da sanarwa ɗalibai su koma makarantunsu ana ba da ƙididdiga ta sauran ana kwantar da hankalin jama'a dai yawa so za mu iya cewa abubuwa za su iya canjawa ga madayin da muka rubuta labarin yawa
na gode ina da wasu tambayoyi da yawa da ba za mu iya yin su ba amma yanzu za mu ɗauki tambayoyi daga wurinmu mun samu guda ɗaya a nan. In akwai wasu masu tambaya ko da ga wani mai tambaya a can, to tambayoyi biyu kafin mu rufe.
Assalamu alaikum, sunana Shamsu Hamza. Ya kamata Malam Ado ya mana bayani mai ainihin ita kalmar husufin take nufi, domin kamar ba bahaushe kalma ba ce, kila ko arariya ce ko abin nan. To duk da dai ban karanta littafin ba, amma yanayin tsarin littafin gaskiya ya burge ni. Yana ɗaya daga cikin abin da prof yake ta fama da mu marubuta na wannan zamanin. Mu baro waccan tsohuwar al'ada ta rubutu da ake ta yi kullum. Labari ne na shikenan kishiya ta yi wa kishiya asiri, da ƙarshe asirin ya koma kanta ta haukace, dole idan kai abu kawai dole sai ka girbi mummunan sakamako a ƙarshe. To shi labari ba haka yake ba, ita rayuwa ba haka take ba. Akwai wanda zai zo a mugu ne ya ta mugunta wata shari'a sai a lahira. To amma mu yawanci labaranmu na Hausa kawai a'a shikenan idan kai zalunci dole a ƙarshe sai ka girbi mummunan sakamako. So yanayin tsarin wannan littafi na husufin farin ciki ya burge ni gaskiya sosai. Sannan ga sayyada maganar da kika yi na cewa mata da miji idan suka haɗu akan abu ɗaya, to gaskiya mu a abin nan al'ummar mu ta Hausawa dole mace ita za ta ɗauki ragamar gida, domin ita ke shayarwa, ita ke girki, ita ke kaza, ita ke kaza. Maganar wai ke ce wai namiji wai ya ba aikin shi ya zo ya ɗauki abin nan ɗin gida, mu a wajen mu kamar kaskanci ne a ce wai a'a wai mace ce wai take tafiyar da gida, kai namiji kai kana zaune kawai kana jiran matarka ta je ta nemo ta kawo. Abu ne da ba zai wa al'ummar mu ba. Kuma sannan matanmu na Hausawa suna da wani abu, su nasu ne, namijinsu nata ne. Saboda haka mu matanmu na Hausawa idan mace tana aiki ta samu kuɗi, to za ta gina kanta ne da 'ya'yanta da 'yan uwanta. Kai kuma idan ka nemo naka shine za a ci, za a yi cefane, a yi ɗinkin sallah, a yi kaza, a yi kaza, a yi kaza. Yauwa, to ina ganin idan aka ce wai mace da namiji, mafi yawanci ma za a ga mace ko irin ma in ka fita haka irin kudin cefane ba su kai ba, taranta naira 100 ta sai magi, to idan ka dawo sai ka biya. To a wannan al'ummar to ta yaya kake tunanin namiji wai a ce wai ya bar abin da yake ya dawo ya zo abin nan ya yi rainon yaro ko abin nan, ai ina ganin kamar abu ne da ba zai wa al'ummar mu ta Hausawa ba, amma ban sani ba ko a wasu al'ummomin hakan zai iya faruwa. Na gode.
Assalamu alaikum. Yawa shi kaman kalman husufin farin ciki, ai husufi kaman kalman Hausa ce. Ko yaushe zaka ji ana cewa kaman wata yayi husufi. So muna magana cewa a duk wani bangare na rayuwa, duk farin ciki da wani jin daɗi, akwai lokacin da bakin ciki da bacin rai kuma zai biyo ka. Ko yaya ne, ko mai kankantarsa shine aka sa, duk in ka bi labaran aka zaka ga a haka suke tafiya.
To, ai hukunci ya ce dole ne ko? Dama mace za ta dole amsa don ba da. A duniyan mu ba dole tsakanin mace da namiji. Shi sa na bada misali ne da wato abin da ya faru, shi sa nake ta cewa a duniyar mu ta inda mu mutane ne duka, kowa yana da yanci, ba kuma wanda yake cewa ba mu san wani bambanci kudin shi abin nan da na magi da waye ba. Amma ina so kamar mu fahimci wani abu, al'ada da zamantakewa wasu mutane ba su cika wa marubuci da baibayi wajen isar da saƙonsa ba. Ɗazu da Malam Bala yake so ya ba da misali, na zaci ma zai ba da misali da wani littafi na ne da na rubuta wasu shekarun da shi na san ya rike ana ci masa mahaifiyar masoya. Littafin mahaifiyar masoya akwai wani shafi da muka ajiye shi na al'ada a matsayinmu na marubuta, sai mun yi faɗakarwa, mun yi tunasarwa, mun yi gargaɗi, mun yi wacece, mun faɗi cewa wai mun zo faɗakarwa ne da shirya jama'a da waye-waye. A wannan na yi faɗakarwa na ce jama'a ina so ku sani cewa wannan littafin an ƙirƙire shi ne don a nishaɗantar da ku, ban zo faɗakar da kowa ba. Saboda wannan da baibayin da muke yi wa kanmu shi ne yake sawa muke samar da irin wannan kotun, mu ce dole in an yi abu sai an ga hukunci nan take. Mu da kanmu a cikin rayuwar mu akwai abubuwa da dama da ba a yi mana hukunci ba, mu fa masu rubutawa ba a mana hukunci ba, tafi muke muna laifi ana yi mana laifi, amma mu ce ai dole sai mun yi amfani da ciwon da yake cikin zuciyarmu. Misali wani bawan Allah ne dan uwana talaka yana so ya rubuta cewa wata mace ta je ta aure mai kuɗi ta ban namiji, sai tuna cewa yana cikin rubutun ya zo ƙarshen labarin sai tuna cewa amma fa ni ma fa talakan nan ne ta yi wuni za a bari maza hukunta ta dan kan waccan ta kyale. Sai ya je ya koma yana cewa sai wancan ya talauce, sai wancan ya yi kaza, sai gashi ta dawo, sai gashi shi kuma ya yi kuɗi ya sai mota, abu sai ka ce tatsuniya. Zai iya gama rayuwarsa ba tare da an yi haka ba. Suna nan a cike a nan wajen. Maza nawa ne a nan su daga hannu mu ji wadda budurwarsu ta gudu, aukar ku daga. Ba abin da yake faruwa, haka ake ci gaba da rayuwa. So bayan haka waɗannan abubuwan ba sa yin da baibayi. A yanzu a zamanin nan yanda aka canja, ba wai a kudu ko a wata duniya ba, har arewa nan ya fara shigowa. Gida ana ba in baka ne, saboda reality na rayuwa ya nuna cewa namiji ba zai iya, inda da ɗan abin da yake samu ne, ba wai an ƙara da wasu hanyoyi na bayan fage ba, da iya abin da yake samu ne, to yana buƙatar gudunmawa daga wani iyalinsa wajen ɗaukar nauyin yara, musamman wanda yake so 'ya'ya su yi karatu, a yi waye, a yi menene. Don haka wannan labarin magin yana can ƙauye, babu shi yanzu. Wata mace tana rage magi, tana biyan makaranta, tana taimakawa in ta samu aiki. Babu wannan abin gaskiya.
Okay. Assalamu alaikum. Malam Ado, musamman wannan kusan tambaya da zan yi ko jawabi game da kai zan yi. Akwai abu wanda ina ganin a storytelling wanda yake littattafan Hausa da ma Kannywood, akwai emphasis da writers suke yi on happy endings, wanda akwai wannan marubuciya Chika Onigwe. Akwai lokacin da na taba zuwa writing workshop ta karantar da mu, na sa abu na farko da ta fara ce mana shine a story is in hell not paradise. Saboda haka insisting sai an ba ma labari happy endings, kusan akasarin rubuce-rubucen Hausa yakan kare da happy endings. So da na ɗauka wannan littafin husufin farin ciki, da na karanta first story sai na ce ha'a, is this something really different? Naga ana ta magana kan littafin nan, kuma na bude naga happy ending ne, kuma wanda most of them are not even believable. Dan wani lokacin kace dole sai ka ba mutane happy ending, you end up giving us what is not believable in the story. So ina tafiya story na gaba, naga Najeriya yammacin Africa, sai na ce yes, I'm in a story here. Sai nake cewa gaskiya there should be a need for English translation on labarin ma, domin it's a very good story. Amma matsala ɗaya da na samu da littafin ka bai iya ƙarasa karantarwa ba. Publication nan akwai pages da dan na je dan na bude sai balle, na bude na gaba sai ina ga har yanzu dalilin da yasa ban kammala karanta littafin ba kenan. Shine so like ina son yi magana kan ecosystem na publication Hausa ne. Akwai matsalan publishers ne ko wani abu shi yasa ake samun irin wannan matsalan ko kuma je. Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum. Yawa magana publishing self publish ne. Kuma self publish duk duniya ana self publish. Za mu iya cewa namu ne ya zama yana da zafi. Har a America na san Colin Hoover self publish ta fara 2011, amma yanzu Colin Hoover tana daga cikin best sellers a duniya, to dai kuma tana da littattafai sun kusa 40. So har a America na self publish. So amma mu namun nan na Hausa abin tintin haka ya taso. Tintin haka ya taso. To mu ba za mu hakura ba. Haka za mu ta tafiya haka. Maybe muka mutu ƴaƴan kuma sai su dawo sai a cika ba kawai. Yawa. Shine ina ga na ansa tambayar ka.
Ba za a daina ba.
Gaskiya. Yawa. Maganan ka gaskiya haka take, maganan ka tana kan hanya. So amma abin da zamu duba shi an buga littafi ba wai abu bane karami, wallahi abu ne mai wahalar gaske. Ba zai zama da kana marubuci ba kuma ka zama kai ne editor, ka zo kai zaka yi tunani yadda zaka cover littafin ka, ka zo kai ne zaka yi review da wasu abubuwan yayi wa mutum da nauyi. A samu wasu daga gefe wanda za su buga wa'annan abubuwan. Business ne kuma wallahi da ake samun kuɗi sosai, wallahi Allah yanzu ka gama soyayya da suke samun kuɗi zaka yi mamaki. Mutane za su wannan standard publishing house ne za su karbi script din mutane su selecting kuma su zaɓi wanda za su buga kuma su siya su ba mutane royalty. Amma mu a Hausa har yanzu ba mu da wannan, amma shawara ce mai kyau, ina fatan wasu za su duba.
Mun gode da duka tambayoyi. Zan maka albishir cewa
wannan mu ma mu kawo littafi ka buga.
Zan maka albishir da cewa muna da publishing house currently, the open art publishing sector, and shekarar da zai shigo za mu publish littattafai guda 10 from Northern Nigerian women with support of the Ford Foundation. In kun fita akwai ma Furan Ƙarya published by Open Arts also, akwai Jerusalem published by Open Arts. So mu za mu cike wannan gurbi insha Allah. Na gode Malam Ado, na gode Malam Rahma. In kuna da wasu tambayoyi kuna iya bin su ku ƙara musu, ni ma zan bi su in ƙara musu wasu tambayoyin. Thank you so much. Sai anjima.
Please a round of applause for them. Mun gode Habiba. An ce ana cikin mace mutum wanda ke da copy akwai wanda ke so ya siya 100,000. Duk wanda ke da copy mace mutum. Littafin Ado Husufin farin ciki akwai copy 10 da suka rage. Zai je waje yanzu wanda suke so ya sa musu hannu su siya za su iya zuwa yanzu guda 10 da suka rage tare da shi. Za mu shiga sashi na gaba and we'll move on to the next panel before we go for a lunch break. And we're doing this because the only person that came early today was Mariam Bakari. Thank you, Mariam. She was here by 9 a.m. We just some housekeeping for the next panel. We envisioned some guests to be part of this panel, but we have to change the direction of the panel. So it was supposed to be about a book, 19 Ways of Looking at Awono, which is a translation of a poem from French to 19 different languages. Unfortunately, Professor Madhu Krishnan did not get a visa to come to Nigeria. Yeah, that happens also. Nigeria can deny you a visa. So she is not here with us. Zakash Makviban is also not here. It will be Richard Ali, Leila Sanusugumbi, and I will be part of the conversation also. So without much ado, I'll just invite the moderator for the panel, Richard Ali. Round of applause for him, please. This segment is going to be in English. Richard Ali is a lawyer, writer, and published his novel, City of Memories, in 2012. He also has a poetry collection, The Anguish and Vigilance of Things. He is a founding member of the Nairobi-based art collective and digital publisher of Jalada Africa, which he now leads as managing editor. He co-founded the Nigerian publishing house, Parisia Publishers, which is a traditional publishing house, and the poetry-only press, Konya Shamsrumi. He has expertise in internet security issues, preventing and countering violent extremism, and the executive director of Engaging Borders. He continues to maintain a law practice in Abuja. Round of applause for Richard again, please. The next panelist is Laila Sanusi Gumbi. Please round of applause for Laila. Laila is a data and financial literacy advocate, a civil society leader, and she's the founder of the Hausa Initiative. It's a platform for promoting data and financial literacy in northern Nigeria. She has over 14 years of experience in health, media, and finance, and passionate speaker for SDGs. She uses storytelling and grassroots engagement to empower communities through digital content in Hausa, fostering inclusive education and financial awareness. Thank you so much, Laila, for joining. The next person is me. Thank you. So we'll have the panel for 40 minutes.
There's a great Nigerian poet called Sia by Robi, And he once said, when being asked, can we meet you? He said, a Siaba Robi is a Siaba Robi. So Sada Malumfashi is Sada Malumfashi. And he brought us here, so he's quite notorious to all of us who are here. So it's an absolute pleasure to be here. Why I'm always ecstatic about events like this is that it continues an intellectual tradition. Why we're here is because we aspire to be public intellectuals. We are not representative of the society, but we believe that in a certain sense that we can be representative. There's a quote by Karl Marx, which I think sets the tone for this conversation. And he says, they cannot represent themselves, they must be represented. So, the 140 million Hausa-speaking people in Nigeria and all over West Africa cannot be gathered into this hall. So, because they cannot be represented in this hall, Sada Malum Fashi and Leila Gumbi are representing them. So if you have any objections to their representation, please aim your blows to the correct place. This place is haram, but this side is okay. So we're going to start from the basics, all right? So my first question is this. What do the words, right, the associated ideas and implications of northern Nigeria in quotes, Hausa in quotes, particularly in the context of this festival and your own life's work, right? What are the associated ideas that come with northern Nigeria, with Hausa culture, particularly in the context of this festival? Do you feel it is inclusive? Do you feel it is exclusive? At what point, so that we can properly situate the conversation?
Yeah, brilliant question. I was listening to the virtual panel by Professor Abdallah Oba Adamu, and he was annoyed that it's now that we're having conversations about Hausa, Hausaness, and Hausa identity more than 2,000 years past when it's due. It's interesting that there is a resurgence of that conversation of what it means to be Hausa. For me, which is just my own idea of it, is there is a separation of a Hausa indigenous person and a Hausa speaker. Those are two different things, but because both the language and the people are called Hausa, there is kind of a mix-up of both. For some languages or for some nations whereby the people and the language are different, there is a distinct identity. When you talk of the Hausa-speaking people, you're talking about some 80 million people within West Africa alone. I'm not talking about those in the diaspora. But when you talk of the indigenous Hausa person, then you ask the question, who is he? I don't know if anybody here can claim that he is a pure indigenous Hausa person. But then that's one thing with the Hausa people and the Hausa language, in that it's never inclusive. We know languages that are very inclusive, that are very within. But with Hausa, it's very open to accepting others, to accepting other languages. In that if you ask, and I was reading a book that was written in 1914, it's not the Hausa that we're speaking right now, the way it was written, and this is some 100 years ago. So imagine the next 200 years, people will listen to us speak, and they were like, well, now, in their own Hausa, are this really Hausa? So, but that has been the history of Hausa, in that the name remains, the tribe remains, the identity remains, but it's always constantly changing. And that's why the language, I would say it's a continuous language, in that it cannot disappear, because what is currently existing now, yes, it can change, but it will remain to its root. There are a lot of languages that get extinct because it's an exclusive language, in that it's within a certain tribe, within a certain people. Certain people don't even speak their language to others except to themselves. With the Hausa person, and this has happened to me, I was in the train station in Rome, and out of the blue, I had somebody fighting, like arguing with someone. I think it's about a train ticket or something. And then he got angry. He was like, "Hey, then iska." And then he was speaking in Italian initially, but like he couldn't convey his emotions in that language. He just switched. And then he just started laughing. But that's how the language travels, in that it moves, and it's not a shy language. There are a lot of languages that are shy, but with Hausa, it's not. It assimilates. And I'm talking about the language being spoken by people in the market, not just as an indigenous tribe of people itself.
I'll bet my last dollar that the guy in Rome was a Kano man.
Kano ne mana?
Because akwai zagi da umbaya Hausa Kano ba baya abin da kyau ba. So you can't try Italian. So Leila, yeah. So same question for you. The ideas of Hausa, is it inclusive, exclusive? Right now, what are your thoughts?
Okay, so for me, I would want to disagree with you, because Hausa on the surface, right, appears to be a language that accepts everybody. But it doesn't do so. I grew up speaking Hausa all my life. I'm ethnically Fulani, culturally Hausa. But from time to time, you still have to make sure you go back home and say you are Fulani, because in a way, you are still excluded from the Hausa people. I know a lot of us here feel that way. Because yes, even though you speak Hausa, but somebody will still use some words that will describe you that might hurt your feeling, but it's just a Hausa person speaking. So yes, Hausa, at some point, you just have to agree that whether they like it or not, and we are taking it. So it is at that point that we'll now begin to see how we can use it and accept it and even take it over and modify it, because with time, it will definitely change, just like you said. And with time, it is everybody that speaks it that will contribute to it changing, evolving, and it becoming ours altogether. Another thing, when we say Hausa, most of the times we just think Hausa, maybe Kano or maybe Katsina. But even when we move to our place, I come from Sokoto State, there is still Hausa that we are speaking there that most people don't understand. And even in that, there is a form of exclusion, because there are things that you come and talk about, and people, because of the way that they speak, already have some nuances or some understanding of some concepts that you will never understand. And from that point, they know that you are not a Hausa person, even though you are a Hausa person and you are speaking the Hausa language. So Hausa, yes, accepts everybody, but I feel it is still a jealous language or a jealous people that keeps a certain part of the language to themselves.
Okay, so if you go to the market in Sokoto and you say Wandeng instead of Wanga, we increase it by 1,000 naira. Huh? So I think we've gotten off to the conversation on a very good note. We have a proposition for an ever-inclusive open source Hausa, and then we have a proposition from Leila that within this open source context, you know, there are certain breaks to it. I side naturally as the moderator and sitting here in the middle. Kasar Hausa is the language of the Hausa speakers, and wherever somebody is speaking Hausa is Hausa land. So, you know, I go for a more expansive sense of Hausa. However, as somebody who speaks just Hausa, I have also come across the same problems that Leila has discussed. And when I'm speaking my Hausa, and there's always that in it's slightly pejorative. I'm like, don't just me. Because here's the thing, all right? On being confronted on the language issue, Chinua Achebe said, well, I'm writing in English. He said, well, we may write in English, but we intend to do unheard of things with it. So I guess this is the thing with the Hausa. And we intend to do very unheard of things with it. So when it crosses to us, we'll speak it in our way, you know, and so we go through Leila and we meet with Sada, we go through Sada and meet with Leila. Yeah, so lovely conversation so far. So let's move on a bit closer to the theme. Which is this issue of linguistic diversity, which is work that you both have done in promoting Hausa popular culture. How do you perceive the role of linguistic diversity in Hausa popular culture? Particularly, what initiatives have you undertaken to support this need for linguistic diversity?
I think this panel is perfect as a continuation, and I didn't think of it that way when curating this, but as a continuation to the panel that just finished and the question that was asked in terms of publishing. When you ask anybody in Nigerian literature, anywhere in the world, it's literature written in English. That's what people know. So when we talk of diversity here in terms of publishing, especially in Nigeria, is going away not just focusing on English alone, and this is also work that Richard himself had just focusing on publishing in English and defining Nigerian literature as literature written in English, because when we think of Nigeria, we think of it in that English terms. We don't think of it as a break away of all the languages that exist. The thing is, I've seen works, literary works in Nupe, I've seen literary works in Tiv, I've seen literary works in Hausa. So in terms of that diversity of publishing is to be able to look at these other languages and see how we can publish in those languages. To me, that's the idea of diversity in publishing. With Hausa, it's more of championing what's already existing. You can't do anything new. It's been published. And I've posed this question to a lot of people, like, oh, what's the first novel published in Nigeria? And it's always, oh, things fall apart. But we've had books published in the 1930s and 1920s in Nigeria, but those are not thought of as the beginning. Of course, Things Fall Apart was special in its time, but it can't be the beginning of the history of the Nigerian novel. The Nigerian novel existed before that. So I think of it in those aspects, in terms of language, in terms of the place of publishing. You mentioned Jos, in that if it's not published in Kano or Lagos, some of it do not think of it as a book. So what if it's written, imagine reading a book in Jos, Hausa and Jos. And it's what she said also in terms of that difference, because I grew up in Kaduna and Sokoto, and I know when I moved from Kaduna, the same thing you're talking about, but when I moved, it was the opposite for me, because in Sokoto, people were laughing at me, saying, automatically, and I was like, I've never been to Kano, I'm speaking, I grew up in Kaduna, I'm from Katsina, but it's that, in that for every locale, there is a particular dialect, there is a particular way of people think, if you don't speak like that, then you are not an original from that place. So that always arises. But how do you work around with these different originalities and produce something really exciting, whereby we can have multiplicity and diversity of works in our languages from Nigeria?
Okay, Leila?
Oh, yes, so that's the beauty of diversity, right? It's not supposed to be, because if it's diverse, then it should not be uniform. I was talking about a thief and his wife who was not of good character, and they were living in an environment. And as he was talking about it, I was thinking, this guy is writing about Chudunwada in Kaduna. Already, he wasn't writing it in Hausa. But as he was talking about it, describing the armed robbers, describing the women, the way they were living, it could be Chudunwada in any state in the north. But he was able to capture it in a Hausa way. He was talking about the Hausa people, regardless of the tone that they may use, or the type of language or the type of dialect that was not conveyed in the book. But the story was able to talk to you, to tell you about the Hausa person. He did not say it is in Tudunwada. He did not even mention where the story was happening, but he was able to convey it for the reader. And for us that are part of this society, we're able to say, oh, this person is talking about me. So I believe for us to achieve that diversification, it's about looking at it from the surface. In the beginning, we have to know that we're talking about all the Hausa people. We are pushing our own stories, regardless. Nobody is in charge of your story. Nobody is forcing you to write about anything. Even though the last spot, Mr. Ado was saying that they used to give people like guides, write about why women should go to school and stuff like that, which are not maybe stories of interest to us. Who cares about that? But when we are talking about stories that actually move us, stories that make us cry, nobody cares if the message or the story is a good one. So I believe diversification can be achieved. We can write it in Kano Hausa or in Sokoto Hausa, but make sure you add a dictionary for the Sokoto Hausa. But if the story is good and the message is clear, I believe we'll be selling it, no matter where the market is.
I love your submission, Leila. I think it's this in Salman Rushdie who has this idea of the sea of stories. So, there's a sea of stories that flows everywhere there's an ocean or a sea, and we just scoop a little bit of it, So if we're true to our craft, then it really doesn't matter, we can do that. No, I'm going to take up on something that I think Sada mentioned, which is, the idea of Hausa being, when we think of Nigerian literature, we think of English, and Hausa being at that strata, which is something we're all quite familiar with. So the related issue of representations, which I think is very important. Theorists like the late great Edward Said has often spoken about this. In his book Orientalism, he highlighted how marginalized groups often lack the power or platform to control their own representation, leading to misrepresentation and stereotyping. I remember the Nedu character, the Gateman Nedu character, Nedu Niger, right? Yeah, who always acts as some sort, he's pretty, the Megad sort of thing, all those sorts of misrepresentation and stereotype which occurs. And we see this, we're always on the receiving end of this. The Aboki stereotype and all of that. So my question simply, how do you ensure that Hausa culture is accurately represented in your publications and the things that you put out? And what challenges, most importantly, have you faced in this regard?
That's a very deep-seated question. I think it depends on the most of the time when you write, they ask you, oh, who's your audience, who's your platform? In my own writing, and which is mostly non-fiction, research-based writing, is what I try to do most is to just uncover and tell stories like she says. The way people interpret or read them might differ, but I try to go and write about, like recently for The Republic, I wrote about this Ibu Malamai, which is like common knowledge for everybody, but like, apparently for some, it's like, oh wow, this exists, but like it's common knowledge. So I try to write about this sort of things that deals with the society. I don't even think of it as a Hausa thing, but like as I think in the places which I grew up, which is mostly Kaduna, Sokoto, to a certain extent, of the things that I encountered or I am interested in, that I feel like, oh, this will make a good story. So I think for me, it's mostly about the power of the story. But one angle also, which I did something recently, and not just with him, but also from brothers from the South, automatically anybody that speaks the language automatically becomes a Hausa person. So that is also a dichotomy there which needs to be, is that that was one way in which I could look at the region without thinking of language itself. I tried to think of it, okay, as the artist from Jos, what language did he use to conceive this work? Maybe he didn't need a language, it's more of the visual. And that was really interesting to see, and I was trying to translate it back into literature and see how that works and how the languages within that region affects how we produce, how we create. A lot of people think in their mother tongue, but then they have to produce works in a language outside of, I write in English, but I mostly think in Hausa. But then so it's like you're doing a constant translation in your head from one language to another constantly. There is a lot of impact that might have in what you produce at the end of it, in what is created, in what is being shared. So I think this, I may not be able to answer it. It's a continuous conversation, a continuous question that we just have to engage with in that manner.
Thank you. At this point, perhaps I should say I'm thoroughly colonized and I think and dream in English. So forgive me. I think it's a very important point. But Leila, please, how do you ensure Hausa culture is accurately represented?
Well, actually, that was the basis of my initiative. I have an initiative, it's the Hausa Initiative. So I'm a data analyst. And most of the times when you have all these courses or you have these explanations, or when you go online, you search, maybe in Excel, how do you do pivot tables? Or when you search up, how do you summarize, or how do you do all this analysis? You hardly find anybody talking to you about how it's done in Hausa. And just like Sada said, I'm not colonized. So I dream, I think, I speak. Even as I'm speaking to you now, I'm saying it in Hausa before I'm saying it in English. It's a natural thing that a lot of us, we're happy about now. But then I started to think about it. You know, they're always talking about how the world is unconnected. Most of the unconnected people in the world digitally are in the northern Nigeria. And I know that they are my people, because whenever NBS publishes any data, it's always Sokoto, Kebbi, Zamfara. They are always at the back. I don't know why, maybe I'm not here to answer that. But it's always us, right? And I know that, just like I spoke earlier, the Hausa man always jealously guards his Hausa. So there are things that conversations that we can have, and just by having it in another language, you already know that some of us are saying, this is not for me. This conversation is meant for someone else, not me. But then how do you get people to participate? We have brilliant young minds that can be driving this AI what do you call it? Revolution. This AI revolution that is happening, you have brilliant Hausa minds that can actually do it, but you are excluding them because you have to come and explain a concept that is foreign even to the English person. You are explaining it to it in English, and you are looking for how to explain it. So what I have been trying to do is just talk about these concepts in Hausa. Explain it in Hausa so that when you're talking about, let's say, data analysis, for instance, instead of always talking about all these sales, John is doing this, John is doing that. No, we're talking about me shayi, in yasiyo breadin shi, yasiyo kwanshi, crate na akachi, waya pusia. Stuff like that. So that way you get people more engaged, more involved, and by doing so, you are even adding to the algorithm. So as people are engaging in Hausa already, Google is already working on this, a huge platform, just getting Hausa to be translated, a lot of things to be translated in Hausa. But it takes all of us, because whether we like it or not, there are things that will be translated for us, and it will end up being a bias. Because the person that is, like, I think Aisha talked about, she said whenever there are displays, when people are presenting their, sorry, I don't know the words for museums, so whenever somebody is presenting they have an art show, it's always an afterthought when you think of the northern Nigeria. So I'm very sure when they're thinking of what happens in the north, the news that you put out there, the stories that are out there, they're the stories that other people are saying about us. So if we are not part of the algorithm, feeding it, telling it that this is who we are, this is what we do, these are the things that affect us, then by the time the robots come and they are taking over, they might have a different interpretation of you. So that's what the Hausa is trying to do. It's trying to get everybody involved in the Hausa language. I had a challenge because, like I said, I'm ethnically Fulani. So I had to ask myself, because I did not learn how to translate in school. So I had that question in my mind. How do I do this authentically? You know, because like I said, Hausa is a jealous language. A lot of people will come after me and say, oh, she's doing it wrong. But we have to get past there, and I have gotten past that. Because the important thing is the goal. If I am doing it wrong, the sky is the limit. Everybody should join. Because the ultimate goal is to be part of global conversations. As a Hausa person, there are decisions that are being made. You know, like there was a Park of the Future that was done in August in New York. They adopted the Pact of the Future, which was part of the SDGs. They said Nigeria was not meeting its goal. And a lot of people are being excluded. So, but how can you include everybody if you have already excluded them from the virtue of the language that you are speaking? So that's what we are trying to do. Get everybody there. Do not exclude everybody. Just because Yana said a Shayi, a Titi, doesn't mean he does not have anything to contribute. Data is data, regardless of how you get it. So if you can get data, people talk about themselves in their own language and they contribute to numbers in their own language, then it's better for planning, it's better for self-help. So that's what we're doing.
Data is data and data is impersonal. I think I'll still keep you on the spot, Leila, because you've segued into the next question which I have for you. So are you tired of hearing her speak? Even if you were, you will still continue. You see, I'm tyrant chairman here. Leila, with your experience creating digital content in Hausa, how do you see technology impacting the accessibility of Hausa language and culture? And the question is in two parts. You know, how do you see technology impacting the accessibility of Hausa literature and content now? And how do you see it continue to do so over the next 25 years?
Technology is the future. We are already there. even though some of us like to read and hold that book in our hand, like that's the beautiful thing to me about reading, holding that book in your hand, and when you fall asleep, it falls on your face and wakes you up. But a lot of people have moved on from that. There are generations that will never hold a book if the technology goes the way it's going. Because, we had this conversation earlier where they said, where I think it was Hajar Ahmad that said that publication is still going on, but it's going on online because other people, the people that is being developed for are online reading it. So technology has taken over and is going to take over. So the beautiful thing is that technology does not exclude. You only exclude yourself. And one thing that always haunts the Hausa community is whatever comes, we are always eager to say it's bad, it's bad, it's bad. That's the first thing that people do. Even when you look at, for example, social media, the emphasis is always on, social media is spoiling our kids, social media is doing this. But social media is reaching to the heart of people. And you that is good, that's your message that you're passing. You're actually passing it through the social media. So you can actually use it to change the minds of people. Those people that you think are being corrupted, you can actually change their minds using that same medium. So we have to move away from this fear. I think it comes from a place of fear, because most of the times whatever comes in and we feel like it's not a part of a Hausa culture, we are quick to say, ba na mu bane, Yahudanci ne, sun kawo mana wani sabon abu. And by the time we wake up to it and we are ready to use it, it has gone far. We can't even catch up. And if it is something that is even harmful, it has already done its harm and has left us. So technology is here and we have to accept it. We have to learn how to use it and make it work for us. Sorry, I keep saying us. And make it work for us. In the next 24 years, we might not even be sitting here because it's already gone there. We have virtual meetings and stuff like that. So how can we now continue to bridge that Hausa gap? When I say Hausa gap, I mean how do you continue to reach people that are speaking Hausa that cannot come and meet us here, but these messages are for them? It's the technology. Whether you like it or not, it's the technology. We can't go everywhere and we can't be everywhere. So it's the technology. So as Hausa-speaking people, we have to start speaking using the technology in its form, but in a Hausanized way. I love the Hausa culture, the way it always takes anything that is beautiful or anything that it likes and makes it its own. So I hope that in the next 24 years, technology itself will be in a Hausa way that makes it work for all of us, and we direct it the way we want to direct it.
So we must be open to change. A round of applause at this point, please. So Sada, I'm coming back to you because of something you'd mentioned. My question is around language and identity. And I guess it cuts through all three of us. You are Fulani, Hausa speaking. I was born in Kano, Hausa loving. Suleiman, Sada is from Katsina, grew up in Kaduna. We have this very hybrid identity. So that's where I'm going to ask you something about language and identity. Considering where we are, we're right at the beginning, first 25 years of this century, and there have been so many changes. To tie to what you said, in the last century, you had the growth of internal combustion engines for cars, and then computers came along. Now we're in robotics and AI, large language models. So in your work, Sada, as a journalist and as a curator, how do you balance the need to preserve traditional Hausa language, culture, structure, norms, side by side, the need to modernize? Leila has made an excellent case on the need to be open to modernization. But considering your background and what you do, how do you balance? Is there even anything to balance? So that's your question, Sada.
Yeah, thank you, Richard. Sorry, I was just thinking, whenever I'm with Richard, I always learn a new English, not really a new English word. I know how to use English better. And I was just been thinking of how he used, I know the word segue, but the way he used it, he segued into the conversation. he's totally colonized, like he said.
I apologize.
I don't think like a purist, and I think maybe that's the issue. I don't think of preserving as much as documenting. I'm very into like, okay, if it goes, if it disappears, that's fine. Things disappear, things go. But do we have it on record? And that's why books are super important, in that once you have them, it's like forever. It's been documented. So I'm very interested in documentation of what existed, and what that is for art with archiving. What they've been doing is preserving old newspapers into digital copies. If you are interested in any conversation that's happened, the New York Times have their archive way back. We've had Gaskiya Tafi Kobo published since 1930s, which will give us a historical representation of what's happening in northern Nigeria since 1930, but we do not have access to those materials. Of course, they're going to go, but can we archive them? Can we document them? So I think I'm more interested in the documentation than the preserving. If we had the Ganwa in Kano, maybe as a VR reality before they were demolished by the government, it would be a different feeling in that we could still access them to a certain extent. Humans will always destroy. We're destroying the planet, for crying out loud. We'll always destroy, but how can we document? So I'm interested in that angle. And in 2022, with the European Union, we were able to get a grant in that Hebaf was archived as a virtual reality experience. It's what you are saying, in that the vision is in the next 20, 25 years, people don't have to come. You wear your VR goggle and you are present as an avatar in the festival itself. That's what's going to happen. So we tried to run that. It wasn't super successful, but it was something we're excited to test, in that the whole festival, which is the problem then was, Kaduna, insecurity, I can't come. We're like, okay, we have a VR goggle, and we took it to, I personally took it to Greece. We took it to Milan. We were supposed to take it to Milan. I don't know whether it's there. In that people could just put it in and experience, just have a feel of what's happening, what the exhibition is like using a virtual reality goggle. So we trialed those sort of things to see what the future will be like. You have to, like Leila said, you have to accept it. You have to be an early adopter of these technologies. Once you do not adopt early, you are left behind forever.
Absolutely, absolutely. No, well-deserved round of applause. Please, don't hold back. Okay, so we've talked quite a bit, all right? So I think it's time for us to deal with the big issues, all right, of northern Nigeria. And perhaps one of those big issues is the issue of education, of access to education. You've mentioned these statistics, which we are well aware of. Highest number of out-of-school children, and even those in school, the quality of the education they are getting is suspect. People can't string a sentence, not in English, but even in logic. Like, this is how this came, like, even logically, they can't string a sentence together, talk less of the language for it. And this is a problem that we have in northern Nigeria. We like to tell ourselves about, our glorious past with Ajami writing and all of that, but it doesn't, affect the reality that today we have the highest number of out-of-school children. Even if you say, okay, teach everybody in Hausa, we still have the highest number of out-of-school children. So there is a problem at the grassroots. We are quite relatively privileged, upper middle class kids trying to represent. So it comes down to that storytelling, to be able to get those logical models across. So my question, forgive me for rambling, I tend to do so. How do you incorporate storytelling and grassroots engagement in your advocacy with your Hausa platform, and of course with your various open arts and the HIBAF for quality education, and what impact has it had any impact on your audiences when you try to do this? I think Leila should take that.
Okay. Whatever we're trying to do, because for most people, data is very boring. So you can't just come and start saying 1 + 1. A lot of people will just fall asleep, especially when you go into technical things that has to say this over this minus this plus this into this, if that, else, you've already lost a lot of people. So you can't do it without storytelling. We don't do it in the Hausa without storytelling. It's something that we have to create, you have to set the stage. So you have to talk about, let's say it is Malam Musa, and for Malam Musa yana ta sana'a shekara 20 ba riba. ba ci gaba. Something like that. So you start saying, so yanzu sai an duba shagon Malam Musa me ke faruwa, nawa yake samu, nawa yake kasha. So you try to tell a story, or you try to say, or we try to say, a ce Malam Musa yana da yara uku, dukansu sai sun je makaranta, kuma ana ba su kuɗin, me ake kiran shi? School fees. No, kuɗin hannu. Kuɗin tara. Kuɗin tara. Ana ba su kuɗin tara.
Da Hausawan kenan.
So ana ba su kuɗin tara. To sai ka ce, to shi ko Malam Musa, san harkar gwamnati, albashinsa sau ɗaya yake zuwa a wata. To yana so ya lissafa ya gani, sorry, I have turned to Hausa. So he wants to calculate it and see if when his salary comes and he has to give these children on a Wednesday, let's say it's every Wednesday, he has to give them 15 naira. So how does he do it? And he wants to also keep this record for like a year so that by next year he knows how to plan his life. So we cannot do that without telling a story. It has to be a beautiful story to keep people engaged. Because once you start talking about, okay, sai ya zo ya kawo naira 50, ya kawo naira 50, ya kawo naira 50, even you guys will just fall asleep here. So it has to be engaging, and it has to be at a level that is very primary. Because those are our kids that are not going to school, unfortunately. Some of them are online. Because data, okay, I don't know if it's still cheap, but data is relatively cheap and relatively available. So people are online and they go there. So we have to reach them where they are. We have to make these stories very easy for them so that when they are having conversations, they don't know that they are saying the things that they have learned, because it's so natural and it's something that they can relate to. That is what we are attempting to do.
And you should follow Layla's initiative on Instagram. I follow it on Instagram. Please don't hold back.
It's the Hausa. So the concept is, you know, when somebody is speaking English to you, you speak English, yeah, you get tired, you to the Hausa. You get? So that is it, the Hausa.
So please check Instagram for the Hausa. Yeah, Sada, same question. You know, how do we incorporate storytelling for grassroots engagement to, you know?
I'm very concerned with when we say the grassroots engagement, in that, especially when we think of non-profit organizations, initiatives as being saviors for this. A lot of people go into this, and I think it's a huge problem. When we talk about the numbers of the problem we have in northern Nigeria, NGOs initiatives cannot solve. We are supposed to plug into existing solutions, but right now they are the only solutions, in that people now think of them as saviors, are like, oh, we are helping, but we're just a drop in the ocean. It's a political problem that the political class needs to solve, and the initiatives and the NGOs cannot plug into and add into it. Open Arts, we cannot do anything to solve the Almajiranchi issue. It's impossible. We have a space in Kaduna where they come in, sometimes when we're doing events, they have free books to read, but that's the best we can do. That does not help their life at all, and it's sad, but that's the reality of it. So most of the time, we actually look towards NGOs like, you need to help, oh, this is your initiative, you need to help this out of school, you need to help gender-based violence victims. We can support, but we need strategic political consciousness. Most of the time, we don't look at the political class. We look towards ourselves like, oh no, your initiative is great, you need to do more, you need to help, but we're at max in terms of what we're doing, and we cannot solve those things without actually putting pressure on the political class to do their job, and then we can supplement, we can augment. Imagine we do not have enough Almajiria on the street. Your work will be even more super brilliant in that we have an existing literate people that will just adopt it. But now you have to do this, you have to start the work from scratch, in that you're not thinking of how do you even start teaching them literacy before they even have technology literacy. And it was interesting what you mentioned. We think of this out of school children of Almajiria as not being they are plugged within the ecosystem. I know I saw a group of Almajiria, they have one phone that they all huddle around. I don't know what they watch, but they watch something all the time. So they are connected to the internet. We just think they do not exist. They're just on their separate ecosystem, or we are on a separate ecosystem, and we need to go and drag them into our ecosystem. But it's a holistic approach, especially, and for me, it's always like our representatives our elected representatives, those that we elected to do this work, we need to put more pressure on them rather than focusing on the Hausa to solve all the problems, or an NGO engaging borders to solve all the problems. It has to start from those that it's actually their job to do that.
Please, please.
I'm sorry, I just had to jump into this go because most of the times we're all at fault, all of us. Because we don't use the channels that are meant for us. You know, we keep leaving our fate in the hands of the political class. We have already adopted this democracy. It was given to us and we've taken it and we are making it work for us. There are other channels. We have to reach out to these representatives. Whether they like to hear from us or not, we have to keep reaching out. Most of the times when we have conversations, we just sit and we lament and we complain. But how many of us have taken time to write a letter to your representative and say, this is my problem, or this is the issue? We hardly do that. We hardly engage. Most of the times we wait until it is time to vote, and some of us don't even vote or don't even contribute to the conversations about this voting. So we end up with representatives that go there to feed themselves. So we need to do better when it comes to that. Truly, no NGO can solve Nigerian problems. A Nigerian problem can only be solved by a Nigerian, by Nigerians, each and every one of us. Yes. Tomorrow, when it is time to come out for election, even if you don't have money, just do poster. Come out. That person that is running for that office will come and ask you, why are you doing poster now, blah, blah, blah. Something like that. If he sees that you are pushing, yes, if he sees that the people in your local government are following you, you have become part of the conversation. You don't even want to be in that office. Maybe you just want to tell them these are our issues. We have to be part of that. If not, we are not going anywhere.
Yeah. You know, I think I agree entirely with both of you. In my own work, non-governmental work as well, you write all the lovely plans, you get the funding, as difficult as it is, you implement the project, and then after all the trouble, you write the reports and then you slam your head on a wall, which is good governance is what would have solved this whole problem. If there was just the most basic good governance, we would not need all these initiatives and NGOs and grants. We would not need them. You know, and again, when we push the can further, it's us that keep electing the worst and worst versions of ourselves. So there's a certain social responsibility that we are not taking up. I think this has been a wonderful conversation. What do you think? Your thoughts are not important, but what do you think? So I am thinking of doing a Q&A. I'm thinking about it. Should we do a Q&A? Kai, no, I've not decided yet, so I'm going to ask them one more question. So, what opportunities or challenges do you see in collaborating with creatives from other African regions to enrich Hausa popular culture? Swahili, of course, is my pet, you know, but yeah, what opportunities do you see? Yeah, there's the whole Sahel belt stretching from Senegal all the way to Somalia, which is quite interesting, and there are a lot of continuities. So that's my last question, and then I'll decide whether to allow them talk.
Yeah, with West Africa, especially with Hibaf, it was easy. The whole of northern West Africa, there are Hausa-speaking countries, like the whole of northern West Africa. So last year we had indigenous Togolese and Benin Republic Hausa people. I'm not talking about Nigerians that went to Benin and Togo and lived. No, these are Togolese and Beninois who came to Hibaf in Kano, and they were part of the conversation. So that's already happening for us in terms of the West African stratosphere. Virtually, we've done with Swahili. We've done with, Richard even moderated that conversation with Swahili. It was Hausa Swahili conversation from Kenya. And incidentally, Richard knows this story. With the thought process with Hibaf is to have that conversation between Hausa and other languages on the continent, instead of Hausa English or Hausa other European languages, but Hausa and other languages on the continent. So that's already existing. There is a huge barrier in terms of communication. In West Africa, for example, our Niger Republic, Benin, and Togo people that came cannot speak English. Most of the time, our people will just go to them and start speaking English to them, and then they're like, oh, we have to switch to Hausa. That's the only language that is common between us because they speak French, of course. So there is that barrier. Right now, we are in a critical situation. Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso will be out of ECOWAS in January, which is unprecedented. It has never happened since the creation of ECOWAS. We don't know how that's going to affect the region in terms of continuous communication, movement, even language, culture, and art. That's
really see opportunities, because for now we are online, and thankfully we don't have the barriers that the borders have artificially created. So it's only opportunities, and it's only to just keep on. I'm saying it in Hausa in my mind, though. So it's to keep on collaborating. You see people reach out, just like he said when he was in Rome, somebody spoke Hausa. So in my mind, like when I meet someone, I just automatically speak Hausa to you. Automatically. It doesn't even come to my mind that this person looks French or this person looks Arabic. Like it's Hausa until the person says, huh? Because going to Kano has taught you that seeing an Arab or seeing a French person doesn't mean he doesn't know how to speak Hausa. So there's a lot of opportunity for the Hausa speaking. You know, like it's a gift that we have to just be able to speak that language, to just be able to understand millions and millions of people. So if used very well, it's a great opportunity, and we can create so much. Like for creatives, when we talk about, I think earlier somebody was talking about clothes, fashion. Okay, it was Star. She was talking about fashion. There are some people that, because they are away from home, their heart is connected to home, and anything that has to do with that house or with that home, they will buy it and they will take it. And a lot of people that are in the fashion industry are actually able to connect with these people and make their sales there. So there's so much opportunity. And like Aisha said, I like to quote Aisha a lot. The sky is the limit. People will never stop speaking Hausa. I'm very sure till we die in heaven, when we get there, we'll still speak Hausa. So it's opportunities. Let's just continue growing and expanding and just making sure opportunities are available to everybody, regardless of their race or their education or their standing in society, or even where their location. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Hausa is indeed nostalgia and identity. Anytime I go to the south, particularly to Lagos, you know, you've been speaking English and Pidgin for 2-3 days, suddenly you are feeling strange. So by the third, fourth day, I have to start strolling from the hotel a bit, and then there's always a Suya guy, or there's always an Indomie guy, and then you just sit down, then you are hearing House. Then you are like, there's something about Hausa, and there's so much we can do with this beautiful, blessed language. And within us who speak it and us who love it, we'll continue to do this work, you know, and move it forward. So because I'm a very benevolent dictator, I'm going to throw open the Q&A, and we're going to take 3 questions. So who's got a question for us? I have a hand at the back. I wouldn't be able to walk to the door if I don't let him answer. Is there a microphone there? Okay, there's someone there.
Thank you very much. And thank you for giving us the opportunity to speak, because I know you're... I mean, it's been a very wonderful discussion here, and I enjoy every bit of it. But I still want to just emphasize on the place of advocacy. And I know it has been addressed in some way, but I was somewhere this morning and someone told me that, they have stopped teaching, they have stopped making the Nigerian language mandatory in WAEC and NECO. That you can actually go through WAEC and write NECO without actually writing any Nigerian language, and you will go. It wasn't like that when I was in school. And then I just feel, all of these things are possible because there is no strong advocacy body, that take these matters very critically, like it should be. Because when we lose our language, again, this morning I saw a 2-year, maybe not up to 2 years, but this boy was speaking Hausa throughout with a parent. And I'm like, how much of this will how much of this will this boy lose when he gets into school and know that this language is not necessary for him to advance, in life, or, to advance in, in his classes, or get a job and all other things. He's not only going to, what we think is that we'll lose the tongue, we'll lose language. What we don't know, essentially, is that we're losing life, a part of existence. And this is why advocacy is very, very crucial and critical. I mean, for a festival like this, I want to believe that you have a body that is, on the street, for example, advocating for some policy that has been, because these things even come, you don't even know that they're there. When history was snatched out of curriculum, many people did not know until someone just randomly said it on social media. And this is what happens, it interprets how we relate with ourselves.
So the need for advocacy.
Yes. Okay. So what is your place, could you tell us the status of your advocacy, efforts, towards the Hausa language, for example? Thank you.
Okay, I'll take 2 more questions, and then we'll just limit it at once, because, we're running out of time. I've enjoyed this conversation a little too much. Okay, so Aisha. Suleiman, you are not here. I'm not seeing you. Huh? Okay, so Aisha, let me have your question quickly and succinctly. My friend... No, how about Aisha will take her question. Okay, so let's have your question very, very quickly.
Okay, Speaker, by your right, talked about...
Sada.
Mr. Adam, yeah?
Yes, Sada.
Sada talk about Hausa speakers, and, they're different from the Hausa originators, the origin of Hausa itself. The thing is that the Sokoto Jihad, which started in 1804 and ended in 1808, created a different, system in northern Nigeria. At the end of the jihad, 50 emirates were created, and this emirate replaced Hausa traditional rulers with Fulbe traditional rulers. And until now that I'm speaking, this rulership that was created by the Fulanis are now the dominant in Hausa land. And that is what has made the language, completely different, Now, the thing is that when it comes to the language itself, yes, Hausa speak in the north. Hausa is like the lingua franca. Minorities all over the north speak the language. If you look at the Fulani man and you say he's Hausa Fulani, he'll tell you no. If you look at the
question,
yeah, I'm going there. If you look at the Hausa man and you say he's Hausa Fulani, he'll tell you yes. So what I'm saying is that now there is no distinct, obtainable, verifiable statistics or data on who a Hausa man is and who is not, because of the intermarriage and political domination. So now he said that there should be a political intervention on how these things are going to be adjusted. How can we do that?
No, I didn't say anything about political intervention.
Okay, so Sarah, weigh in on the 2 questions, Leila, you weigh in, and then I take the other 2.
Okay. What was the first? The direct question with advocacy. Yes, very important. And one thing I think that we always forget, and he mentioned that, is this constitutional, they always do this public, I don't know what they call them, but you can go and talk about, especially when they go to the debates, they have to do that public hearing. Sometimes it's difficult for people to come all the way to Abuja because it's mostly happening in Abuja, but it's important to have someone there to speak for what you want, especially. And we try as much as possible to join, because whenever there's something that has to do with Hausa language, Hausa culture, we try to participate or to be present in those conversations that will determine what the language is going to be eventually. Another outline academics have tried is to be able to have a standard orthography also for Hausa, even in terms of writing, which is one thing that helps in terms of publishing and literature. Now, without a standard orthography, even presses can't publish a standard Hausa language. Of course, with English, instead of standardized, that's why you can write it anywhere in the same. You can write Hausa in various different ways, and it's still Hausa, but I know academics are working at a standard orthography of what can be adopted for written Hausa itself, which is another thing to think of. So I totally agree with the advocacy. And with the second question, yeah, I said initially I'm not a purist in that way, in that you have to define who is a Hausa person, who is not. Whoever says a Hausa person is a Hausa person. To me, if you do not identify as a Hausa person, that's totally fine. If you identify as Hausa Fulani, that's also legitimate for me. So I don't think of it in that. I engage with people who can speak with the language at any form or at any one. That's why I feel like for me, Hausa has been accommodated in that it's not purist in that way. You could speak it. Of course, there are few people that will tell you, oh, you are speaking Hausa in the wrong way. But I don't know what's the wrong thing about it, as long as you can communicate. Of course, when it comes to writing and literature, of course, you get the academic standard. Even English has, they call it the standard academic English, SAE, for writing. Every language has that. But in terms of communication, if you speak an Irish person and a Scottish person, you know that there are different Englishes that can be spoken.
Okay,
for the first speaker, yes, advocacy is very important. You know, before we even came to this conversation, I had already told us that, yes, we're all at fault because we need to be part of conversations that affect us. For the Hausa, we don't do any advocacy yet. I don't know if we're going to do it because the magnitude of the thing that we have taken upon us will take us, we will die without us achieving that. I believe that TPAF is a very good platform. It's a very good platform. And if all of us can come together and join and speak about these things that we think affect us, then it will be beautiful. Because apart from just that, taking Hausa out of the curriculum, there are other things that actually affect us as Hausa people that we can actually talk to the lawmakers using one voice. Because no matter how much we shout, like you say, one person just shouting doesn't do anything. But if a whole group come together and just talk, it makes sense. So I agree with you. Advocacy is very important, and it is one thing that I hope all of us will join you. Yes, advocacy is very important. For my friend, I talked about the House plan. Imagine the beauty of a language, right? That you have somebody come over and conquer you, and still the people that he's conquering are still speaking that language. How beautiful is that? It shows the strength of the Hausa language. For it to, as I sit here, I had to struggle with being Hausa Fulani or Hausa growing up. Because I'm ethnically Fulani. My mom is Fulani, my dad is Fulani. We don't have anybody that will say, yes, this person is from Hausa. When you go to my village, we can't communicate because they don't speak Hausa, I don't speak Fufu, they didn't go to school, so they don't speak English. So we look at ourselves and we smile. And when I'm about to go, I wave and they wave and we leave. So imagine that you have taken over a kingdom. And yet, those kingdoms are still speaking the language that you came to meet them with. So just that, even if you don't like that Hausa, you have to give that to them. So yes, Hausa, yes, there are people that are Hausa. Yes, but even them, they can't say now that they will exclude us. They will say to themselves, or maybe a kind of one on the streets, they don't like but we don't care. We don't care. Because Hausa people, we're not taking it away from them. We're not fighting them. Yes, but there are Hausa speaking in itself is a different thing. It's an entirely beautiful phenomenon. And what I pray, what I even hope is the whole world will just start speaking Hausa. It's so simple. It's so easy. Like when you're trying to communicate and explain something, and then you have to start thinking, Kingane, they cannot Gane because they don't speak Hausa. So yes, the Fulani came, Usman Danfodio did what he did. He sent his people, but now his people are Hausa. So thank you.
Thank you very much. I think we've had a lovely conversation, and it's only fitting for us to take the last question from Aisha Aliu Bima. Aisha Aliu Bima is one of the most engaging artists that I know. She put together the Arewa collection at the Shiloh Museum, and she's a very good friend of mine. So Aisha, please, your question.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much for that, Richard. I'm a bit flattered. I almost got thrown off the course of my question. But my question is mostly for you, Leila. And this is a question I get a lot, but I'm very interested in it in the context of the work that you do in trying to make education more accessible in Hausa language. So very often we hear this talk about having or delivering education in the language of the dominant language. That the first thing is, what is really the feasibility of being able to deliver the entire Nigerian curriculum to standard in Hausa language to these students? And my second question is, if you are able to do so, do you think that in the context of Nigeria and the global broader context, that you're sort of setting these students back by not providing them with the ability to learn English language and to have it as like their dominant way of scientific thinking? And I'm asking this even though I'm all in support of having all the material accessible in Hausa language to complement. But yeah, I just want to know what the feasibility of that would look like, and also what the utility of it will be if we get this done. Thank you.
Okay. So when we talk about the feasibility, right? Right now, look at what's happening. We've had how many years of teaching? Like, all of us went through the system and we were taught in English. How many of us are able to come across? Imagine, okay, there's this story, right? My friend, he relocated to UK. He had a 4-year-old. When they got to UK, they had a conversation with one of the teachers. She called them in for a teacher-parent conference, and then she was complaining about their kid. She said he doesn't talk, he doesn't communicate, he doesn't participate, and she was actually telling them to take him to the hospital because she thinks that he has something is wrong with him. So they brought him home, and there was nothing they could do, but of course, you know, Nigeria, why would I take my child to the hospital? Forget that woman, she doesn't know anything. Fast forward to the next term, not even a year, the next term. She called them back for a conference, and she said that their son is the most unruly on this, on that, and he has a clique, he has a gang, and he's just disrupting her class, and she thinks there's something wrong with him. So they asked him, they said, Farouk, ya za a yi an ce da baka magana, yanzu kuma ka zo kai kake jan faɗa kake waye. Ya ce ai lokacin ban iya turanci ba mama. So you get, we are just by not speaking the language that the children understand, they are already at a disadvantage. Already they are at a disadvantage. Yes, I believe that people should learn languages. Unfortunately, I'm not one who knows how to learn languages. I'm not gifted with that. But I believe that it opens up a whole new world for everybody. So I would not want the Hausa children to be disadvantaged by not learning another language other than their own. Yeah, what stops them? Sorry, what stops them from learning English as a language? And you teach them the things that they need to learn, the concepts that they need to learn in their own language. Sorry. I'm so sorry. Well, I'll talk to you right now. Yeah, I just wanted that the fact that the curriculum, and that's what Darius mentioned, that this curriculum already exists, like the Nigerian education curriculum exists in at least all the 3 major languages, just that we don't use them. And I think major countries also, they teach 2 languages mostly. Most people that I know that come from outside Nigeria, which is unfortunate. At least every Nigerian should have at least 3 languages, not communication only, but being able to read in those 3 languages. Most European countries have at least 2 or 3 languages in which their education is being taught. So I think that's also something to consider. And there's Google Translate. Which is also something.
So, thank you all very much for being a wonderful audience. I think that when we talk about the language debate, we should also realize that the language debate has already been lost, and that the language that won is the language of mathematics. Zeros and ones. So Hausa, Yoruba, English, German have all lost in favor of that. So thank you for being a wonderful audience, and to my
Thank you.
Just housekeeping, we've run short of time, so we'll just have 30 minutes break. lunch, stretching, whatever you want to do, and we'll be back by. We'll try to be back by 2:15 for the sessions on. We're doing film screening next for the next 2 hours. Is Zainab Kuizi here? And one more thing, we're going to have, within this break, we're going to have a tea and reflection session. If Zainab is here, she has a mental health group, a very brilliant young woman who has a mental health group, and they're going to serve tea and talk about mental health. So please hang around and they will let us know. Zainab, are you here? Come over, please. Please, round of applause for Zainab. She'll just tell us the modalities of what they're going to do, and we'll have tea and discuss.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Zainab Kuiji, and I have a mental health support group called Tea and Reflection. So what we do at Tea and Reflection is that we organize group therapy sessions where we talk about contemporary issues and